Good morning. I'd like to call a few minutes late. I apologize for that. The Finance, Ways and Means Committee to order for March 21st, 2022. Madam Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Representative Campbell, Camper, Crawford, Faison, Freeman, Gant, Garrett, Gillespie, Hawk, Hicks, Hodges, Lamberth, Lynn, Miller, Ogles, Sexton, Shaw, Sparks, Todd, Whitson, Williams, Wendell, Zachary, Vice Chairman Baum, Chair Lady Hazelwood.
Here.
Madam Chair Lady, you have a quorum.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Are there any personal orders or announcements? Seeing none, I have one, and I would just ask for those who might be watching and for those in the room for a moment of silence for a very close and dear friend of mine, Grady Williams, who passed away this morning. He was an icon in Chattanooga. There's not one good thing that's happened in Chattanooga in the past 40 years that he hasn't been a part of. Raised money, worked hard, and just really, truly made a difference in the community. I was honored to work with him in so many places, in so many ways. And I was just telling Chairman Hicks here, he was like my big brother. I grew up with 3 little brothers, but I never had a big brother. And Grady was that for me. And I was the pesky little sister who followed him around, and he tolerated me. And I think even grew to enjoy it. So just if you would, his wife Phyllis, over 60 years, and their family, it's a very tough time. And I would just ask your prayers. Thank you. Today we've got several budget hearings scheduled, and everyone will be happy to know that these are the last budget hearings. First up, we have the Department of Human Resources. And members, as always, the documentation is on your dashboard. You'll be able to find it there. And we will ask the folks from HR to come up, make their way to the front. And Commissioner Williams, if you would introduce yourself and those that you have with you, and we will just ask you to get right into your presentation.
Thank you. Good morning.
Good morning.
Chairwoman Hazelwood, as well as committee members, I want to thank you for the opportunity to be with you today. And with me, I have to my right, Deputy Commissioner and General Counsel Leslie Farmer. To my far left is Holt Witt, my Senior Policy Advisor. And to my immediate left is Cindy Hobbs. She's Administrator of HR Operations and Budget. It is an honor to represent the Department of Human Resources as we work to fulfill our mission, which is to lead enterprise human capital management for the optimum customer experience. We're very proud to serve Tennessee's 42,000 state employees as we work to position the state of Tennessee as the best place to work in the Southeast. Now I'm going to ask Cindy Hobbs if she will present our fiscal 23 budget request.
Good morning. Thank you, Commissioner. As Commissioner said, I'm Cindy Hobbs, HR Program Administrator over HR Operations and Budget, and I'd like to present our fiscal year 23 budget request. For fiscal year 23, we are requesting an additional $1.25 million in funding due to increases in demand in HR services to support state agencies and to provide funding initiatives that will result in long-term cost and efficiency savings. The funding will support the department's CFG goals and 4-year strategy. At this time, I would like to provide a summary of those proposed cost increases. We have requests related to DOHR workforce capacity needs and improvements. In our Recruitment Services Division, we are requesting $500,000 to meet the statewide demand for sourcing and recruiting top talent, as well as an additional $58,600 to reclassify a current position to a director. Request for recruiting services has increased 97% over last year. Each recruiter averages 93 postings per week, which is significantly higher than industry standard. In addition to job postings, the recruiting team manages 6 year-round programs to support our diverse recruiting initiatives: Tennessee Leaders of Tomorrow, Hiring Our Heroes, Career Explorers, Second Chance Employer, Model Employer, and Focus Searches. This funding would eliminate the current overtime accumulation, meet the current and anticipated volume of recruiting needs, and most importantly, increase efficiencies when vetting candidates before they are hired, resulting in reducing enterprise turnover. In our general counsel's office, we are requesting $376,000 and for 2 positions to provide support for workplace harassment investigations and legal services. 2 of the positions will assist the EEO division, which is responsible for conducting workplace discrimination and harassment, abusive conduct in the workplace, and violence in the workplace investigations. Each investigation goes through a very thorough approach, which involves interviewing the complainant, accused and supporting witnesses, collecting evidence, and analyzing information. The Legal Services Division has also seen an influx of requests for legal assistance and opinions on employment law matters. In addition to the investigations, the positions will assist by providing legal support and technical employment law assistance to agencies. The department currently oversees investigations for 6 cabinet agencies and the boards and commissions. Also, the department handles investigations for allegations involving an agency, senior, or executive leader, internal allegations within DOHR, and allegations in which an agency has a conflict and/or the agency requests the department to investigate. In our Learning and Leadership Division, we are requesting $220,000 for 2 positions to provide learning opportunities and training to the state of Tennessee as an enterprise. In 2019, Learning and Leadership Development reorganized positions to increase efficiencies by streamlining programs. This reduced the number of facilitators managing the Commissioner Academies. We have an increase in Commissioner Academies by 87.5% from 2020. In addition, we will be working on 17 new workshops to provide learning opportunities for the individual contributor. The additional positions will support key services such as Commissioner Academies, conferences and events, and strategic business planning. Lastly, we are requesting an HR data analyst. We are requesting $100,000 for 1 position to create and analyze data requirements for various DOHR divisions in order to meet the needs of internal and external customers. Request for human capital management data has increased by 31.5% year over year. Our Organizational Performance and Data Management Division also manages survey creation and reporting, which has seen an increase in 173% in new surveys and 43% of survey reports. This concludes our budget request, and I'll turn it back to Commissioner.
Thanks, Cindy. I'm really proud the department is playing an important role as the state's reimagining a workforce of the future. I'm also excited that we're well on our way of achieving our vision to be the best place to work in the Southeast. Our fiscal year 23 budget will support us on this journey to be the best. Again, thank you for this opportunity to share the Department of Human Resources fiscal year 23 budget requests. This concludes our prepared remarks, and I welcome any questions you may have.
Well, thank you, Commissioners. And we do have several questions, beginning with Chairman Hawk.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and Commissioner Williams, thank you and your team very much. I appreciate the work that we've collaborated on to give a little revamp to the TEAM Act and working on the specific legislation, working with Holt, Mr. Witt on that legislation. So thank you very much for that. Let's talk a little bit about the volunteer separation program. A couple of years ago, we had thought that we were going to engage more folks than we actually did in the separation. Can you tell me a little bit about where we've been over the last couple of years? How many offers were made? How many employees accepted the offer? Kind of give us a snapshot of where we've been over the last 18 months or so with the voluntary separation program.
Thank you, sir. I'll start off and then turn it over to Deputy Commissioner Farmer. When you did grant those dollars, at the point we saw a concern as it related to the pandemic and concerned about revenue. And so during that time, we realized that we were doing well as a state. So we decided to look at a different approach to become more efficient by using those voluntary separation dollars. So we looked at really span of control, and that is how many employees report to a particular supervisor. And we realized that we were way out of line as it relates to other industries. We had quite a few supervisors who may have had one employee, and we made an attempt to get that span and control number more respectable to where it's more of around at least 4 employees or 5 employees to every one supervisor. So as for the details of that, I'm going to turn it over to Deputy Commissioner Farmer.
Good morning, Leslie Farmer, Deputy Commissioner General Counsel. So as Commissioner Williams was stating, our voluntary separation program, we use that as a tool to kind of increase our operational efficiencies across state government. So we did look at span of control, looking at those managers who had fewer than 4 direct reports. So we wanted to increase that. Plus, we also wanted to reallocate some of that human capital resources to more critical priorities. As the Commissioner stated, with the pandemic, we saw a lot of efficiencies that could have been gained. So that was kind of the two tools that we used to really look at our VSP this year. We did have about 13 agencies to participate in the VSP. And 12 agencies actually had employees to take the VSP. About 628 employees were eligible. So this is much smaller than the prior voluntary buyouts that we had back in 2008 and 2015, because we were looking at those operational efficiencies from those 2 areas. 125 employees accepted the VSP. The benefits package included 5 months salary, $6,000 for an insurance benefit, go ahead and paying out the longevity through June 30, 2022, and also providing any accrued annual or comp leave. We represented about a total of a little over 4 million. Agencies did receive some operational efficiencies as a result. We don't know the full extent of that, but agencies did receive, I think, operational efficiencies of around 5 million because it was such a small amount of employees compared to previous years.
Chairman Hawk.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Out of the 125 employees that accepted, was there one agency or department or that was more affected than any others? And I'm glad to hear that we're looking at efficiencies. Was there 1, 2, or 3 that were mainly affected by this, or was it across the board with all 12 agencies that had participated?
It was across the board with all agencies that participated. Some agencies had over 100 people to participate, that were eligible. And then about, 25 to 50 people took the VSP. Some agencies were very small and only had 1 to 5 people. So it really depended upon the agency and what their needs were. Because one of the things when we were looking at changing the operational efficiencies, we wanted to do it without impacting employees as much as possible. So that's why it was such a small group of employees.
Just to follow up on that, remind me how much money we budgeted for that program and how much was used and what happened to any remainder.
I believe it was about 20 million that was provided for the VSP. I think we used a little over I don't know exactly the total amount for annual and comp leave that was paid out. Those are usually paid out from the agency's budget, and I'm not sure if we use that from the VSP fund. But at least for the 5 months of salary, 6,000 for insurance benefit, it was about 4 million just for that cost alone. And like I said, I'm not sure how the other funding was used. And I believe it may have just went back into the general fund, but I will have to check with our budget office just to make sure.
If you could do that and just let us know if that,
Yes, ma'am.
so there's $16 million there that perhaps reverted to the general fund. Chairman Williams.
Thank you, Chair Lady. Thank you, Commissioner and team for being here today. I noticed your number one budget line item is $500,000 in recurring expense for recruitment. I guess the first of all, the question is, where are we in the process of this? Are we in the RFP process, or is it too early for that? Or what is your plan for that money?
This is Cindy Hobbs, HR Program Administrator. It is a little bit early. We are in the planning stages on how to spend that money. If we do need to go through the RFP process, that's what we'll enter into. We have looked at some other areas that are statewide contracts, being able to utilize those statewide contracts if possible. So right now, we're just kind of in the planning stage.
Sorry, Chair Lady, has the department ever had contracts like this for recruitment in the past, or is this something that's new altogether for your department? And then I guess if so, why $500,000 in recurring instead of a one-time non-recurring amount?
I'm not aware of having this in the past, but given where we are from a recruiting standpoint, as there's underemployment, there's not a lot of people. There are more jobs than there are people out there. So we're being very intentional to recruit, and we don't see that changing in the near future. And part of what we did was create a more of an enterprise recruiting system for DOHR to help the other agencies, where we can source candidates, and we really need some support to do that given the job market.
Right. Thank you, Chair Lady. As an aside to that, I guess, of course, in the private sector, in my business, we're having trouble hiring people too. But as it relates to a recurring expense, if once you get through the RFP process, are each individual department of state government going to be billed, or is this going to their budget, or will it all, for instance, if you recruited people to go to TDOT, engineers go to TDOT, are they going to bear any of the expense or transfer any of those monies there, or is it going to be one sole RFP for human services, human resources?
So it would be just one sole for human resources, but we would partner with agencies to help them through focus searches to be able to help them with recruiting their top talent. But it would be within the Department of Human Resources if we were to have our own contract going through that RFP process. We would also build this back to agencies. Part of us being an internal service fund is our services are billed to state agencies, so they would pay a portion of that.
Okay. Just one last question on that, and then I wanted to ask something else. As it relates to those costs or those recurring costs, can your department use any of those funds to pay, like we did for bonuses to correctional officers to get them started, or is this strictly 100% recruitment money?
This is strictly recruitment monies. This would be to provide some additional staffing for our department through some contract services, looking at some platforms as well, some recruitment platforms like LinkedIn, Talent Solutions, and then some additional career fair platforms.
And I have a follow-up on his question, then I'll get back to you, Chairman Williams. Okay, you mentioned that in response to Chairman Williams' question, you mentioned that this $500,000, some of that will be allocated, some of those costs will be allocated to departments based on your recruitment for those departments. So we're paying for it through you all. You all will get some of the money back from the departments. Where will we see that money in the budget next year? The recouped money.
So the charges to the agency, it'll just be part of their budget. F&A budget would allocate any state appropriation to those agencies where our charges would be more than what they're currently budgeted.
But my question to you, we have $500,000 here, and maybe I'm not looking at this correctly, but we're giving you $500,000 to perform this service. You're going to perform the service, but you're going to bill at least some of those dollars through to various departments. So my question is, you're going to get paid twice. We're paying you $500,000. They're going to pay you back. So where will we see those dollars reflected? The payback.
In our department's budget.
We're going to be looking for that.
Yeah.
Chairman Williams.
Thank you. To the chair lady's point and to your comment earlier, you stated that you were going to add some additional staff as it related, but that isn't a completely different line item. It's line item 2, I think. So will these 2 new positions, it looks like that you're allocating some unfilled positions now to be able to add these recruiting, which is why you're showing a net change in the number of jobs is 0. The question is why the additional $58,000 of additional money if you're just reassigning the jobs? What would that $58,000 go to?
So that 58,600 is to create a director position for that way they can assist our executive recruiter, be able to take kind of the day-to-day operations off of our executive recruiter so she can focus more on strategic planning of recruitment services. So that would be part of that salary.
Okay, so it's just a salary increase. So
That's-
whoever that person is would be responsible to make sure that the chair lady's monies are returned back to your department. Thank
I
you.
wish they were my money.
Yes, no worries. Thank you for your question.
Chairman Baum.
Thank you, Chair Lady Hazelwood. How many vacant positions do we have right now?
For the executive branch, we have approximately 6,400 vacant positions, total 6,800.
I guess I'm asking within your department.
Within our department, I don't have I think it's probably
Maybe 2.
2 positions that are vacant.
I guess I was asking because we're creating funding for 5 new positions. I was wondering if it'd be possible to reclassify some of the vacant positions instead of creating 5 new ones.
That's a good question. Of the 2 positions, one is in the process of being filled. The other one, we're still deciding what we're going to do. We usually utilize all of our vacant positions in areas that need that support.
Okay. A few more.
Chairman Baum, go right ahead.
And just out of curiosity, how hard is it to reclassify a position? Is it difficult, and does it take a lot of time?
Leslie Farmer, normally it doesn't take too much time. It depends upon what the position is being reclassified to and the type of funding that's needed for the position, but it normally doesn't take that long.
Okay. And then more across state government in general, which departments or agencies have the highest turnover rates?
Yeah, I would say the top 2 departments would be Department of Mental Health and Department of Corrections.
Okay. And are we doing anything unique in those departments to help with their high turnover rates, or departments that have high vacancy rates?
Yes, sir. Over the last 2 to 3 years, we've worked with the agencies regarding their turnover. And part of that is we work very diligent around employee engagement and retention efforts. Currently, historically, well, a year and a half ago, we worked with corrections, mental health, DCS on their top 5 positions with the highest turnover in the state, and work with them on a plan. This year, we're focusing on safety, Department of Safety, Department of Education, Department of Human Services, and DID. So we partner with them to come up with a plan of how to reduce turnover, increase retention, and really we did multiple approaches. We're looking at employee engagement. We're looking at culture. We're looking at leadership development type training, things like that to give the agencies tools.
Okay, okay, thank you for that information.
In a somewhat related issue, in this current budget, last year, we put in $40 million for market rate adjustments because we recognized, and it's been reinforced by every department that we've had in front of us, everyone is having difficulty maintaining and recruiting employees. So, one of the first things I learned in business, if you're trying to build your customer base, it's a lot easier to keep a customer than go out and get a new one. I think that applies to employees as well. So can you tell us where we are in utilization of that $40 million, what the plan is for that if it has not been dispensed? I mean, we're here almost the end of March, so not much of the year left. So give us an update on that, please.
Leslie Farmer. So we've utilized that 40 million in 3 phases. Our first phase was in October, where well, I guess we could say the initial phase was for our July 1 increases, where we looked at those statutory agencies that we provide increases for. And those were your troopers, your wildlife officers. That's part of their statute. And then we had the initial phase in October where we looked at certain agencies based on turnover. So we looked at several agencies in that phase. The second phase was in December, where we looked at DCS and also looked at an increase for corrections. That was the big correctional officer. And I know additional funding was put in for that one. Our third phase, we're actually implementing now, where we're looking at several agencies. And we've utilized the full 40 million for that. In this at least final phase that will be effective on April 1st, we're looking at several groups, looking at employees who make under $30,000, looking at a significant increase in those, looking at those who are either under midpoint, meaning the market for their salary of a 15% increase, up to the who are under midpoint, and if they're over, then a 10% increase. Another group where we're looking at salaries under $50,000, and again, looking at turnover in those classifications. We're also looking at LPNs and RNs because we've seen a number of turnover in those classifications, so looking at increases for those, and then also our accounting and auditor series. So these will be effective on April 1st, so that should cover the major point of all of the market money that was utilized.
So that $40 million will have, with the raises that will become effective April 1st, you're saying all of that will be utilized?
Yes, ma'am.
In
That
this
that
year.
that will be the final phase because we've already had 2 prior phases in October and in December.
And I know in this year's budget, there's an additional $120 million. So can you share with us the plan for distributing those monies to make sure, again, I can't reiterate enough how important I feel like it is to get the money out the door as quickly as possible, because if those employees do sever their relationship with the state, we're not going to get them back. If we can do things on the front end, if we can give them enough raise to keep them, then we have saved training dollars, recruitment time and dollars, and all those things. So just help us, I guess, get comfortable with the fact that there actually is a plan that is ready to be implemented with the passage of this budget to utilize that money effectively.
Yes, Chair Lady, you're speaking my language. I agree with you 100%. Retention is key. We have good state employees and we need to retain them. So we're currently working with Ernst & Young on a compensation study. We have not had a compensation study since 2013 to see how our compensation compares to both public and private sector. So some of the preliminary data we're looking at, we realize that about 64% of our jobs are below what the market rate is for the private sector. So part of that spending will be on those classifications to get us closer to market competitive with the private sector as well as the public sector. So that's going to really, this study is going to really drive our plan of how to quickly utilize the $120 million we're requesting.
And can you tell me when you'll expect the final study to be available?
May, July. Okay, it should be by July.
And is this across the board or all state agencies and departments included, or
It's all
is it-
executive branch, yes.
And what about our contract employees, like our DIDS folks and the DSPs and the folks that the state contracts with? Are they included in this?
No, it's just active state employees, not contractors.
Okay. All right. Again, I just think it's critically important that we get this information and we start
Yes, ma'am.
utilizing it as quickly as possible, because sad to say, but by the time we get it in July, it's probably going to be a bit outdated, because we all know what's happening with costs and wages. Everybody is competing for a limited supply of workers. So we all know what that means. Next on my list, Chairman Whitson.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Good morning, folks. And my question has to do with your employee sick leave bank. On the questionnaire and for 2021, you indicated you're budgeted to receive $150,000. According to the questionnaire, the sick leave bank had a reserve of just a little over $9.4 million. My question is, how many state employees currently participate in the sick leave bank, and did COVID have an impact on the account? But before that, could you just give us a brief explanation of the sick leave bank and what it does?
Good morning, Leslie Farmer. So our sick leave bank, it is similar to a short-term disability, where it provides state employees up to 90 days of payment for certain serious health conditions. Employees, as a result of the sick leave bank, they provide 6 days of sick leave in order to join the sick leave bank. In order to receive payment, they would have to be in a leave without pay status for a period of 5 days to be able to receive the benefits from sick leave bank. And in some cases, depending upon after their 90 days, they can possibly get some donated leave, which is a little bit separate from sick leave bank. I don't have the current number of state employees who are sick leave bank members, so I will have to provide that with you at a later time.
And ma'am, did the COVID have an impact on it? Because we're showing the balance in the bank was in 2017 had $15.6 million. Like I said, it's down to 9.4. Was that because of COVID or?
No, I would say it was not because of COVID. So back in 2014, 15, we had an actuarial study done for the sick leave bank. And one of the recommendations, because each year we try to take a day of sick leave from all employees. One of the recommendations from that actuarial study was to waive the days from state employees. So that has kind of been drawing from the bank to kind of lower that balance. So since that time, we have waived the annual 1 day of sick leave from state employees to continue in the bank. So we've just gotten those who have entered but have not continued to take those leaves. So that has brought the balance down a little bit. I would say COVID did not have an impact, because during the high peaks of COVID, the state of Tennessee utilized the federal government's families, the coronavirus, response plan, where you provided so many days of leave for employees. So employees were able to utilize that benefit up to September 30th, 2021.
And ma'am, do you see that the bank stays solvent and will not need future state appropriations from what you see now?
That I can't answer. Cindy, do you have?
And that was the plan, is to stay solvent. I mean, that's why we had partnered to do an actuarial study, just to see how we could utilize the reserve balance and to bring that down, but not cause any additional impact there.
Okay. Thank you, Madam Chairman. And thank y'all.
Leader Lambert.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Just a couple of questions, and good to see you, Mr. Witt, and always a pleasure to see you, my friend. This year, the salary policy recommendations are $64.3 million, 4% basically raised for state employees, then $15.4 million for non-team act. Just looking at this, that appears to be the largest raise state employees have received over the past decade. Is that accurate?
4%.
I'm looking back at 16 was a 4% raise, but it was smaller in amount. That was for the executive branch. I can't see anything over the past decade that was larger than that. So I'm just trying to get an understanding as to whether or not that's the largest raise we've given in the past 10 years or not, or is it equitable to previous years?
I can't say with certainty, but I think it's equitable with one of the largest.
Okay. So here's the reason I asked that question. So when you look at, again, just the past 7 or 8 years over turnover rates and average length of service in the state, it's all stayed relatively the same. We've given, again, this may be equitable to the largest raise, but it's got to be the largest or at least close. But we've steadily increased employee pay. We've tried other things, just as you all have mentioned a while ago, and y'all have done a really good job of that. But it just seems like 11 years is kind of the average service, no matter what we've done. And it seems like that turnover rate hovers around 20%, give or take a little bit, high teens, low 20s, just about no matter what else we do. So is that just kind of the nature of state employment in Tennessee, or are there things we can do to kind of dislodge us? And I know, Commissioner, this is something you guys spend a lot of time on. What's driving that? And is that just the way it is, or is there something we can do different, or should we?
Now, Leader Lambert, that's a great question. You can see the comparison of what the increases, raises, and a lot of similar to the private sector, there's increases given, but you monitor turnover, and we monitor our turnover consistently. And you're right, it has been consistent. We continue to give raises, turnover stays pretty stagnant. Giving now and what has happened over the last 2 years, we have to be more aggressive because the rates of pay are going up. People are leaving their jobs, and some might not even have jobs. They're just tired, just kind of to put it plain. So we have to be more intentional about trying to keep our employees, because we have certain job classifications, as one commissioner shared with me, where an employee is making $13 an hour and they see the sign at a fast food restaurant where they're paying $15. So they have a decision to make. And you see in underemployment everywhere. I think the last stat I read, there's about 1.7 jobs for every person that's unemployed. So given that, and also given the climate that we're in, where I'm excited for ECD. Commissioner Rolfe, my friend, he's doing a great job of bringing companies to Tennessee. Guess what that does for us? Now we are competing with them for top talent and trying to get state employees. So we have to remain competitive to both the private sector as well as the public sector as it relates to pay, because our employees see a job across the street is paying more and they may be attracted. I think working for the state gives them that opportunity to serve their fellow citizens. So it's a lot about what that person is inside that make them stay, but we also want to make sure that we're competitive with the pay.
Leader Lambert.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Thank you, Commissioner. So, and I'm all for that. I want to make sure we're competitive. I think that's a good idea. Our hardworking state employees, need a raise. I have family members who work for the state. It's, there's no doubt about it. That's a part of it. But is there anything, just kind of looking at other states, looking at industry, is there anything about that year 11? Right there between 10 and 12 years, it just seems like that's the average length of kind of service that we're getting from state employees. Now, when you look at how long it takes for someone to earn retirement, I know state employees that have been here 30 plus years. So I know there's folks that go the whole way, but what is it about that 11 to 12 years? Why that number? Just because it seems like it's consistent, no matter about 20% turnover, about 11 or 12 years. What is that?
There's a couple factors there. One is with our generations. Our older generations that's been here usually has longer tenure. We're constantly monitoring turnover by generation. So when we look at Generation Z, that's our highest turnover. That's that 20 to 25 age category. That's where we have our highest turnover. So we're watching that. And then we look at it, millenniums, and that is our second highest turnover group. So that's kind of that balance of new employees and employees that's been here. So what we're really doing is focusing on what do we need to do to create the right culture to keep all employees, so we can reduce that turnover. Because with millennials and Generation Z, they see things a little different, and they want things from their employer that we have to make sure that we're aware of and try to provide.
Leader Lambert.
Last question, Madam Chairman. Sometime or other, I'd love to, and this is between this year and next year type conversation, not for this session, but just maybe a better breakdown of kind of where those falls, because I mean, if it's, that average doesn't really show kind of exactly what you're mentioning on, those younger employees that have been here 10 years, what's our turnover rate there versus kind of those that have been 10 years plus. Is that turnover rate, I would imagine anyways, that it would fall off pretty dramatically on folks that have been here long enough that they think, okay, this is going to be my career. But just kind of a better look at that. I know you guys spend a ton of time at that, but just sometime a longer conversation outside of committee on just how do we keep those folks? Because I'd like to see more of them make it a career. Again, I have family members that, at this juncture look like they'll be with the state as a career. I mean, for their entire working life. And that there's a lot of pride in that there. And we need more folks like that really, get in there and make that their expertise serving the people of our state. So thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Yeah, Leader Lambert, thank you for that, because I do share that we want employees to come to the state of Tennessee, not for a job, but for a career. And you can have a career in state government serving your fellow citizens and almost do anything. We have every job imaginative that we can offer. So to me, that's going to be our competitive advantage going forward. So I would love to have that conversation with you, sir.
And I know that we're doing the market rate surveys. We've talked about that to some degree, but when these employees leave, are we doing exit interviews? Do we have information? I'm sure salary is part of it, but I know burnout is some. And when we have like the issues that we've had in places like corrections, like case managers who are just overburdened, then that definitely is an impact as well. So do we have good information on how many people are leaving because of the pay and how many people are leaving because of working conditions or just other things?
Yes, ma'am. That's a great question. We do have that data, and we do exit surveys. I would admit that we have an opportunity to increase participation in those exit surveys from the different agencies. But the number one reason is pretty consistent for a number of years has been pay. Some have cited, their supervisor, as a reason for leaving. So we monitor that closely, have a department that focus on that and getting that data and then planning strategies to prevent that.
Again, I think that's critically important because there's a limit to how much money, we can throw at this issue, but there are other things that we can do in terms of work environment and that sort of thing that would help us retain those employees. And I certainly hope we're exploring those. Representative Shaw.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, sir, for being here today. I know we've talked about a lot this morning, but then there is that monster, that exciting monster that's before us, which is Blue Oval. What plans have you been able to make, or are you making plans for the coming of Blue Oval? Because we know, in spite of the situation, issues we're dealing with now, do you see this to create more of an issue for you, or what's your position right now on that? If I could squeeze a little out of you, Commissioner.
Yes, sir. So I think one important piece is this total comp study. And so we can understand what is the average pay or for a particular job in the market. And then when we know that, at least we can make adjustments to be market competitive. We also have to be aware around culture. Some people may leave their job for an increase in pay, but realize that they're not having that ability to make a difference. And that's what I look at it from a state employee perspective. So we have to really encourage that culture. We have to, as part of this total comp study, we're looking at benefits as well. what benefits we're offering. Are we competitive in that aspect? What are the things that we do? We have a significant amount of employees that still have the capability to work in a hybrid work environment where they can work from home or come into office. Those are all what we're looking at as the total benefit that the state employee has. And we have to communicate to our state employees, here's your total rewards statement. It's beyond just your salary. Here's the benefits we offer. Here's the retirement. Here's the ability to work from home. Here's just all learning and leadership development. We have probably the best learning and leadership development in the country, I would say. So we have a lot of things to offer, and we have to just make our employees aware of that and ask them to look into that.
Well, I know that we're looking at building the tech center, which is going to be a training tool. But in terms of the employers are getting bodies, I guess is the best way to put it, to get those bodies out there, because, I just heard you talking a few minutes ago about some people are just tired and some people just quit, walked away from their jobs. And I just wondered if you had anything in mind as to how we would recruit for that project, because that's going to be one of the biggest projects we've had in the state. And we don't want to fail at that point, hopefully. So I just would appreciate anything you could help us with.
So I'm speaking from my role focused on state employees. I think Department of Labor and Workforce and Commissioner McCord, he has more of a view on the general workforce. Because my goal is to get the best and the brightest state employees. That's where my area of focus is. Now, Commissioner McCord, he want to make sure that we have the workforce for all places. So similar to Blue Oval and making sure we have citizens that's ready for those jobs and go to the training centers. So I would love to collaborate with you and Commissioner McCord to talk about that even further.
Commissioner, you mentioned the entirety of the package for our employees. A place I worked for a long time, every year, in addition to our W-2, we got a statement of basically what it cost the company for us to work there, which included insurance, it included retirement, it included Social Security payments that the employer made on our behalf. And we all know when you look at the cost of employee, the wages is just a portion of it, maybe 2/3. There's a significant amount of money on top of that deals with the benefits. So again, that's something I'm not sure that we do a good job as an employer of making sure that our employees, are aware of that. So again, I don't know how difficult that is to do, but I got one every year, and it's like, well, I was kind of mad about my raise, but I guess maybe I won't be after looking at this. So, it really is an eye opener. So just, again, food for thought. Are there any other questions for the commissioner or his team? Chairman Hawk.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And we were talking, I think a question was inadvertently asked, maybe inadvertently answered, about 6,400 vacant positions across all of executive branch of government. As we're talking about how those dollars come back into the budget, I don't want to give you the easy answer, but do those come back from each department in the terms of reversions, or how are we discounting that off the state budget? Because we're budgeting for those 6,400 positions.
So the vacant funding or the funding for those vacant positions would, depending on each agency, would be either their reversion, help their reversion to meet their reversion target, or if it would go into a reserve or however. I would have to kind of defer to F&A budget on the vacant positions and the dollars that go back to either the general fund or back into a reserve pool.
Are there other questions? Seeing none, Commissioner.
Just back to your initial question around that total comp statement you described, we do have that statement. It's in our Edison system. We do have an opportunity to do a better job marketing and sharing that information with our employees, making it easier for them.
You don't want to get me started on the Edison system and its wonderful transparency and ease of use. So I think there are many things that might be in Edison that most of us would have a hard time finding. I shouldn't say that. People like me might have a hard time finding that. I'm sure others would be. So again, just having it out there somewhere in Edison is, that's maybe not the best methodology for getting delivery to employees, but soapbox issue, and I apologize. All right, I see no further questions. Commissioner, thank you for your time this morning. We appreciate you and your team spending some time with us.
Thank you.
And we look forward to hearing the plan as I requested for how we're going to spend the $120 million that we have budgeted. And frankly, based on the market rate study when it comes in, if that's going to be enough, that's an interesting piece of information we'll need as well. So thank you. So we have our military folks, and they're anticipatory. They don't even need instructions to come to the front and sit down. We appreciate your proactive approach. Major General Holmes, if you'd like to introduce yourself and your team members, and then we'll just get underway.
Yes, Madam Chair, I'm Jeff Holmes, 76th Adjutant General, State of Tennessee. I'm going to use my front row here and then some subject matter experts that are here with me. And so to my left is TEMA Director Patrick Sheehan, and then to his left is Major General Jimmy Cole. He's our Deputy Adjutant General. We have Brigadier General Nubbin Ross. Nubbin is his nickname, Warner Ross. He's Adjutant General of the Army, Assistant Adjutant General, and then Assistant Adjutant General Air is Colonel Jason Glass, and then Jennifer Ponto is our new Physical Director, and she's done an outstanding job getting us through what is her first budget cycle. So I want to welcome her to the front. We also have our Facilities Management Officer, Colonel Milligan. Andy Milligan is here with us. Alex Pelham is the TEMA Chief of Staff. Dennis Adams is the Director of Admin Services, and then Nick Atwood is our Legislative Liaison. So, Madam Chair, if I may, I would start with just a frame of reference. Our current budget, total budget, federal and state, is approximately $110 million. Our improvement request represents approximately $16 million for a total of $126 million. 68% of our budget is federally funded. The remaining, obviously, is state. So we'll talk through the slide number 2, I believe. Madam, if you're ready to start, I'll go down the list.
Yes, please.
Okay, the first item is the STRONG Act. STRONG Act, as you know, through all of your support, is a tuition assistance provided toward master's degrees, bachelor's degrees, trade certificate programs with our TCATs. This budget request actually provides a reoccurring $3 million funding for that program. That program was started in 2017 with an infusion of $8.9 million as a pilot program, and that has been extremely successful. So this request will fund that on a yearly basis. We did, through, again, your support, add master's degree, first-time master's degrees to that program, and that has been successful. We're seeing a lot of desire to pursue those degrees. We'll be gathering data to see what our burn rate is on a yearly basis. Right now we're projecting about 2.3 million per year, but we don't have a lot of historical data on the usage as it applies to the master's and certificates degrees. And I'll just say, this past year, we've done a number of Southwest border missions, and in my last visit down there to our soldiers, they were down there for a year, And, they were working 12 hours on, 12 off. And I think one of the things that maybe fly under the radar is the benefits of this program, because there were a lot of young Tennesseans, young soldiers that in their off time were starting degrees and finishing degrees based on this grant and based on the Strong Act. So it is going to, it's been used, and it is a recruitment incentive and a retention incentives for us. So thank you. The next 5 items, ma'am, are the TEMA. There's 5 TEMA items. Item number 2 is disaster relief grants. Currently, that program is, and this is a $6 million reoccurring request. It's currently funded at $4 million a year. This adds additional $6 million for $10 million a year funding. It's going to allow for additional funding to allow the program to keep pace with the anticipated needs. Item number 3 is TEMA operational positions. This is $540,000, and this is $340,000 reoccurring state and $200,000 non-reoccurring. These are for 6 positions, and they span a number of different areas to include budget management, data analysis. A lot of those things will go toward achieving, actually maintaining and achieving reaccreditation, the emergency management accreditation program. A lot of this will actually benefit with data management and data collection. We anticipate it's going to lower overtime rates for some of the employees, and it's going to reduce burnout. The next item is TEMA warehousing operations. This is a non-reoccurring state request of $5.5 million. Currently, TEMA is renting a warehouse, and this will allow us to maintain that lease until we can work through a consolidated warehouse solution with general services. So this is again, 5.5 non-reoccurring state. That the current warehouse, obviously with the market in the position it is in, this will allow ongoing negotiations with maintaining that capability. Item number 5, emergency services coordinator program, $75,000 reoccurring state. So TEMA has these emergency service coordinators. They represent anything from all of the departments of state to NGOs to other outside agencies. And these are additional duties for the employees from these respective agencies. And they come to TEMA and they obtain training. They participate in exercises, all for the focus of addressing domestic response events when they happen. This is also going to add some of those ESC positions. The next one is unmanned aircraft services, $53,000. These funds would provide equipment and training oversight of the certification of the UA across the state. Next item, established military department locksmith position. This is $50,700. This provides critical security repair capabilities. That position was eliminated in 2020 as far as some of our budget reductions. Currently filled with temporary labor and some additional duty, and this will allow us to maintain security and manage the the locks and things of that nature across the state. Item 8, Tennessee Association of Broadcasters grant. This is $60,000 reoccurring state. This would go to the Tennessee Association of Broadcasters, and this would allow a satellite backup. It'll allow redundancy in our alerting systems, and that would be beneficial, obviously, to the public. And the redundancy piece would be absolutely critical in the event we lost the primary means of communication. Item 9 is volunteer training site Milan, additional personnel. This is $824,800 federal, reoccurring federal. These are 8 positions as we continue to expand our training site in Milan. These will be federally funded positions, which will include firefighting positions, targetry maintenance, facility maintenance, and environmental monitoring. Slide 3 represents our department's reduction plan, which is 1% or $176,700. We have a goal of, we have achieved that goal of identifying a couple of items. One is the increased energy efficiency based on our solar shades that we've been installing across the state, as well as an experimentation with telework program that we're experimenting with the department, which allows us to completely or almost completely shut down some of our facilities on certain days. We're seeing a benefit of that, and that we think that we can save approximately $44,000 a year. So, Madam, slide 4 through 6 show our critical responses since March of 2020. We currently have approximately 300 National Guard that are deployed overseas now. We have another 300 that are planning to deploy in the next 12 months. We've got service members deployed in Europe, Middle East, and Africa. Our 3 wings fly missions for the Air Force on a daily and nightly basis. TEMA and the military have responded to 8 large-scale emergencies, to which 2020, March the 3rd of 2020, 3 tornadoes, 1 hurricane, 3 civil unrest missions, both here and in our nation's capital, multiple times, multiple flooding, multiple ice storms, a Christmas Day bombing, and 2 significant southwest border deployments. We expect 2022 will bring more of the same type missions. We kind of hope that 2022 would be a normal year. Obviously, it's not appearing that that's going to be the case, but our department is ready. We have almost 13,000 soldiers and airmen and TEMA employees, and we're ready today to respond to any emergencies required of our nation or our state. Madam Chair, subject to your questions.
Thank you. Busy and challenging period of time for you, as you have helped everybody in the state deal with from natural disasters to pandemics and to disasters of man-made. And we appreciate the service of you and all of the members of your team, both your TEMA team and the Guard, obviously. So we are very grateful that you all are there standing in the gap. We have several people on the list for questions. Chairman Todd.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you for being here, and appreciate all that you do for our state and our citizens. In the current budget year, there was an appropriation of about $1 million for establishing 11 positions for a 4th TEMA region based in Chattanooga. Wanted to ask, can you provide an update on this project, and then is it progressing as expected?
Thanks for the question, Chairman Todd. Patrick Sheehan, the TEMA director. So we established that office. It takes some time because we couldn't take action until the 1st of July, but we hired a regional director through internal promotion. So we opened it, cast a wide net, which is my preferred way of promotion and selection, is cast a wide net. Someone internal who had been a district coordinator for us for almost 2 decades applied and was selected. And so Charlie Hall is our regional director for Southeast office. We subsequently then had 2 district coordinators transfer from the middle and east regions to join that office. And then once we settled that that was the number of internal transfers we're going to have, that we posted those positions. Most of them are filled now. We have 1 posted there right now, but the other positions are in the process of being filled by personnel that have been selected. So to include the planner there in the Southeast, almost all of those positions are filled. And we did move 1 position back to the middle region just as we were trying to get better coverage between our district coordinators and the number of counties in each region. That's kind of what we did to achieve our intended purpose, which is to increase the amount of service we can provide to our counties and cities.
Okay.
And I'd just like to commend you on your choice of Director Hall. He's a great guy, happens to be a constituent, which is neither here nor there. But he has done a fantastic job, and everybody that dealt with your organization, county, cities, all the small cities in our area, they were all in his corner and rooting for him just because of the relationship that he had already built there and their faith and trust in him. So good job you hired the right guy. Chairman Zachary.
Thank you, Madam Chair, General, and team. Good morning. Thank you for all that you do. Just before I get into my questions related to some numbers, I have a question just in general about morale overall. I had many conversations with the base at McGee-Tyson when we're walking through the vaccination and so many evaluating their options, being forced to take a vaccine. And at the time, one of the gentlemen there told me that they were just struggling with morale overall. Could you just kind of speak to that in general about where we stand from Memphis to Mountain City and morale in the Guard?
Yes, Leader. I think morale is absolutely is okay in Tennessee. We have been tasked to do a lot of hard missions, and both here in the state and abroad, and our soldiers and airmen have done those missions, and they get a sense of fulfillment from them. I think what you may be experiencing is and I don't want to say it's the unknown. We're dealing with a global pandemic and specific requirements that are going to be mandated by us in service and the uniform service, and how the unknown of that is going to kind of play out. We have a lot of very technical processes that we have to go through to afford every soldier and airman the opportunity to request exemptions from the vaccine, and I'm talking to the vaccine specific, but just the fact of how that is kind of the struggle to meet those deadlines, to get all the information correct, to go through the due diligence for each and every airman and soldier, so that they get their due diligence heard. That just the way that is kind of interacted with all the other duties and the training requirements that we have is a challenge. So I think just speculation, but I think a lot of the maybe the frustration is associated with the unknown, and it's kind of hard to predict. And I could get into it in more detail if you would like, sir, but I think I sense that morale is, it's driven by a purpose. And as long as our soldiers and airmen understand the purpose, like the Southwest border or any of the other missions, if they have good leadership at the platoon lowest level, and they know that people care about them, and they're going to pay them, and they're going to feed them, and they're going to not commit to something that's beyond their capabilities, that's the three basic tenets of leadership. And as long as we apply that leadership, we'll have 12,000 volunteers that'll always be ready to respond. Subject to follow-on questions, sir.
Thank you. Yes, sir. Thank you. And then let me say quickly, we had TBI Director Roush and his team in here last week, I believe on Tuesday or Wednesday. And much of the conversation centered around fentanyl and just the scourge in our country and it coming across the southern border. So to you and your team, I mean, literally what we're doing in Tennessee and helping try to secure and stop the flow at our southern border makes a significant difference. So thank you to you and your team. It's greatly appreciated. I know sometimes, and everyone, and just because it's the thing to do, we can sit here and say, oh, thank you for your service. We appreciate you guys. But with all sincerity, we do. We appreciate you. We value you. We don't take you for granted. And so thank you to you and your team for what you do. And now just to jump into some numbers quickly. In line item 4 in your presentation, you had listed the 5.5 and non-reoccurring for the warehouse. Last year, we appropriated 1.3, I believe, for the logistics warehouse. Can you give an update on how that 1.3 was used, and then just provide a status on the lease moving forward? And I think you maybe covered a little of that, but can you just kind of speak to that as a whole, or Patrick, please?
Yeah, and Director Sheehan and Alex and all three of us may kind of contribute to the answer to this because it is very complicated. And I'm not sure, I don't know the end result of how the lease will actually be defined. We're currently in negotiations through General Services with the current warehouse, and we're trying to keep the lease negotiated to basically a short-term lease. We don't want to lock ourselves into a 5 or 6 year lease, which is what the market is kind of driving. So this is really intended as almost a stopgap measure to allow for settlement or settling into what could be a consolidated warehouse at the state level. Your question specifically to the 1.6 million, I believe, of previously allocated money and how that kind of feathers into this, Director Sheehan?
Chairman Zachary. So I don't have the figures exactly with me, but I believe, if I'm remembering correctly, it was for we used it for non-federal match. So with presuming that the Stafford grant, but also for things that would be deemed ineligible either under the Stafford Act or under the CRF or ARPA dollars, so that we could maintain an effective warehouse operation, which we did, quite frankly. Probably put together the best warehouse operation of any state that helped manage a response to COVID-19. I think that's safe to say. You can go and compare with your peers across the nation. But so we used it for those purposes. Where we are in terms of the balance of it, sir, I don't know off the top of my head, but I'm happy to go and look and report back to you.
Thank you. One more, Madam Chair, if I may. Related to, or more warehouse questions, related to the $80 million in ART fund requested for the 4 warehouses, and then the $647 million being appropriated for the 4 projects. Can you speak a little bit to the cost, location, timeline, kind of where we are on those 4 projects? And then as a follow-up to that, I think there was a request for 29 additional positions. Can you speak to how many people will actually be needed out of that 29 to man and run the functions of the warehouse?
Yes, sir. So I don't think it'll be 29 positions. I think we will end up contracting some of that labor out. It depends too on what we end up doing in terms of the footprint, right? So we looked originally with ARPA dollars to fund these facilities. Those ARPA dollars are pretty well spoken for, and that's due to the collaborative nature of the work in the Financial Stimulus Accountability Group that the governor and the General Assembly worked to have and to allocate dollars, state and local, for infrastructure projects. We were concurrently asked also then to put together a capital budget, which you're referring to. So it won't be both. It'll be, looks like we're going the capital route. The F&A commissioner will retain control of those dollars and will continue to look and see what our footprint needs to be. We did look at 4 warehouses, 1 for each of the TEMA regions, 1 just so we can have material like we do with our people closer to where they might be needed. We know from experience here in the last 2 years, and really before that, because we do have an older warehouse building in West Tennessee, that having the material closer to where we need it really helps us be faster when we're responding to things that usually fly under the radar. So a water system has a pressurization problem that depressurizes. We provide bottled water. We provide shelter kits and goods and meals to those shelters. And thinking beyond COVID and thinking just in terms of what we're seeing in disasters in Tennessee, we need to be ready to move with an initial tranche to help stabilize that initial disaster scene until the private sector and other public sector entities can resume their normal supply chain operations. And so we'll continue to look at that. I think we'll end up using mostly organic staffing that we have internally. But as we look at building out that footprint, I imagine that we will talk to the General Assembly again about what appropriate staffing looks to be for maintaining an expanded footprint of facilities.
Well, Patrick, thank you for your leadership as well. Fortunately, in my area, we have not experienced a natural disaster and some of the things that have gone on, like in my colleagues' area and others on the committee, but you guys have stepped up and exceeded expectations in terms of what Tennesseans needed and just in terms of my colleagues based on the response I received from them. So thank you for your leadership. It makes a difference. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Mr.
And I think we'll all just say an amen to that. And I think the variety of disasters and the variety of things that you all are called to do presents another challenge that you have all risen to very well. So again, we can't thank you enough for that. Representative Lynn.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. My area is one area that has had a couple of disasters in the last few years, but I have a question. The department indicated that $2 million in federal funds were available for emergency response under the EMPGS program, and the department had only expended $84,000 by December 21st of 21, with a deadline of 1/22/22. The department indicated that you're requesting a 6-month extension on the use of the funds. Was this extension granted? And if so, what is the new deadline to use these funds?
Ma'am, I'm going to let my chief of staff, who has these figures off the top of his head, brief.
Gotcha.
Good morning, Alex Pelham, Chief of Staff, TEMA. We did get the extension granted, and what we were also able to do was we were able to utilize some of the uniqueness of the CRF funding to provide almost an in-kind match, to where we're not expending state dollars to the match of that. We refreshed the programs, so we had things initially done, and as our Stafford and other funding sources pushed to 100%, we're able to classify some of the projects and maximize what we were looking to draw down from that.
Right.
So yes, to answer a long story short, yes, ma'am, we were able to get the extension and be a little more expedient in what we were doing.
Thank you. That should be a great help to the department. Thank you. Thank you, Madam.
Chairman Whitson, it's a military group, and I know that you just must feel the need to speak and address them. So please do.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Again, I just want to express my appreciation for all your service. And I know that Guard has been so involved in this war on terror since 9/11, and it is just greatly appreciated. And also, I'm proud to call Director Sheehan his constituent, and I appreciate the great job you and your team do. And I just want to let you know, too, that Nick Atwood represents y'all well as a contact. Actually, my question comes from the chair lady. She says, how desperate would the situation be when you need to call Whitson back to active duty? General, you don't have to answer that.
Yeah, I was going to ask Madam Chair to be relieved of that response, please.
Yes, we all recognize that Chairman Whitson is truly our last line of defense. Representative Shaw.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This is not a question. I just wanted to say that I'm proud this morning to have one of my constituents, was one of my constituents here. That's, we call him Nubbin back home, but he was superintendent of schools, director of schools back in Hardeman County, and he's now with the Guard. And I'm just proud that he's here this morning. And I'm proud of all of you, and I thank you for what you do. In fact, every morning when I get up and look at the news, I'm reminded of how much it means to live in a free country like America. And thank y'all for what you do. And Madam Chair, if I'd just like for General to say something, if you would allow him to say something this morning.
Certainly.
Yes, sir, Representative Shaw. Number one, I still am your constituent, so always have been, and I travel back home quite frequently. Number two, it's an honor to work alongside General Cole and General Holmes and General Cole and the entire team. There's very few positions that I would have left the school district to do, but this is certainly the only one, and it's been my honor and privilege to be a guardsman for the last 32 years and to serve the state in multiple capacities. Thank you.
Representative Shaw.
Just briefly, would you call Representative Whitson back to service?
I wouldn't hesitate. He or you, Representative Shaw.
General, we certainly recognize the fact that we are living in the South when we have someone before us of your size who is called Nubbin. And at some point offline, there's a good story behind that we would like to hear.
Absolutely, 100%. There is a story behind that.
And never let it be said that Southerners don't understand irony. I think you're a living example of that. Chairman Williams, you're recognized.
Thank you, Chair Lady. Gentlemen, just want to say thanks. Chairman Zachary recognized me a moment ago when he talked about what was going on, but I want to say a few things. One, had an opportunity to visit our troops in Poland several years ago. It was a great opportunity for me to see our men and women in action so close to the Russian border was pretty amazing. But one of the things that we brought back there and understanding is that our folks could actually go and do online school. So to hear about the impact of the Strong Act while people were deployed all across the United States and around the world is pretty amazing. So that is something that I think this body should really take into consideration, because it is really an important part of what we're doing to develop our soldiers after their service too. So it's really exciting to see that. So thank you for sharing that. I did not realize that they were able to do that even at the southern border. I think, of course, the people in my district very have come away with a changed really from the March tornadoes. But I told Chairman Zachary when I met Patrick Sheehan for the first time, his hair was all black and shiny. Now he's aged a lot in the last couple of years. But General Holmes and Patrick, your service to our community is seen and it is very important to all the citizens of the state. But you don't really know how much until something happens in your community like we've seen. And I think if the members could pull up on the dashboard the graphic on page 4 of that, it's really takes your breath away to see how much work and effort and commitment that you and your departments have, not just to the people of Tennessee, which is unquestionable, but also to the people of the United States. And so you're to be commended. We really appreciate for, all that you've done. I will say as an aside, the tornado really changed a lot of families' lives, but I was telling Representative Zachary today, one of the young girls that was thrown hundreds of feet from her home, who had a traumatic brain injury, is doing great. She's my new neighbor, actually. Her name's Harper Minette. She was able to throw out the first pitch at the UT baseball game this weekend. So there are some really great examples of what's going on in our state. And because of the work of your team and our local community, that is a reality. And so I want to thank you very much.
And Chairman Williams brought to mind a question I had wanted to go back and talk about the Strong Act, the $3 million that the increase, and just ask how much of the monies that we've allocated previously have those dollars all been utilized, and just how many, do you have an estimate of how many guardsmen are actually participating in that or have participated in, and do we have numbers on those who might have completed degrees through that program?
Yes, Madam Chair. So we had projected, and I would actually just kind of be guessing if I told you the exact amount that we currently have in the remaining balance, because the way the money is paid out is somewhat different as they apply for that. So it's depleted at not a standard rate, but we did our calculations. We were going to deplete all the money by the end of this year that was in that account. So we think that we're going to have a burn rate of 2.3 million. Again, that's without the historical data of the increased certificates and the master's degree. There's been about 10% of our service members that have accessed the Strong Act to some level. So that may mean that they've applied for tuition based on a semester, a whole, 4-year degree, a certificate, anything of that nature. So, that's a pretty significant number at this point in time, and we can only expect that to increase. So 10% roughly of 12,000 would probably get you the number. Some, and I'm not sure how that's calculated, if they use it for a semester and then they wait 6 months, use it for another semester, but 10% of the force would probably be a safe number to say that have utilized the program.
Well, again, that's heartening news, because we, established the program hoping that there would be that kind of utilization. And I know it's a bit early to tell, but I know you mentioned in your remarks that you feel that that's been a good retention tool, and every department that you heard it, you were here for the previous hearing. And so you know that retaining employees in whatever field is it's not easy right now, and we need to do all that we can to make sure we continue to do that. Chairman Faison.
Thank you, Chair Lady. Gentlemen, ladies, thank you for being here. Thank you so much for volunteering to serve our country. Just a quick question. When I was a senior in high school, I actually signed a lot of papers and I wanted to be a Navy diver. And I shattered my ankle my senior year, and the Navy did not want me to be a Navy diver. It's been a great regret all my life that I didn't actually finish that and get to serve. And I was just talking with Colonel Whitson here, and he was telling me about the state guard for old timers. And he said to ask you guys, tell us about what is the state guard and what is the position of it? Is it an active situation going on right now?
Yes, yes. So thank you for that question, because it's often not recognized that we do have a state guard, and we have approximately 300 state guardsmen, and they're in 3 different regiments in each of the 3 grand divisions. And though previous or prior service is not a requirement to join the state guard, it's totally a state, I don't want to say state militia type. It's all under state control, with the governor being the commander in chief. They provide a number of different specialties, I'll say, or support a number of different things. They have an MP unit. Communications is one of their really enormous strengths. They do the ham radio. That adds kind of redundancy when we do exercises for domestic response. Of course, communication is absolutely key. So they're side by side executing their systems to allow that redundant communication. They have been really a significant contributor to the COVID over the past 2 years for the COVID response. There's a lot of providers, some retired, some currently actually performing as doctors and nurses and things of that nature. So they've been on the front lines for the past 2 years. Interestingly, there were a number of retired active duty providers that wanted to contribute. They reside here in Tennessee and they want to contribute to the help. That was a re-entry point, was through the state guard, so that they could actually put a uniform back on and then apply their trade to the state effort of the COVID response. And they talked about this at the federal level of allowing that reentry for retirees. That would have taken 4 or 5 months for that to happen. We were able to do it in a matter of days. As soon as someone showed up, we put them in one of the platoons, one of the units, one of the regiment, put them in a uniform, and then we sent them out. So and they do a number of other things throughout the year. They support various events. They do traffic control and things of that nature. So it's a great asset that we have here in Tennessee. And thank you, sir, for your question on that. Over.
Representative Sparks.
General Holmes, just want to thank you and your staff and for all you do. I don't know if Nick got to tell you, but I had a lady reach out to me, Wendy Lloyd, on a Jeep license plate, and we're calling it Explorer Tennessee, and the proceeds are going to benefit a soldier's child that's based in my community by Daryl Mack. And as you know, my friend Freddie Hahn was killed in Iraq, and I don't know if a lot of members know, I trained him at Nissan. He went to Iraq, lost his life, and I came up here. So it weighs kind of heavy on my heart. But I appreciate the outreach that y'all do. Recently his mother, a Gold Star mother, passed away, and y'all reached out, Colonel Jim Reed, and your staff reached out to help her. She passed with COVID. But Freddie's son kind of hangs out. I mean, he was just 4 when he lost his dad, and I've seen the good work that a soldier child does for these families, but I had Wendy on the radio with me last night, and she sold 805 of those tags already. 805. Last August, we had her. She organized a Jeep event at Sharper Springs Park in Smyrna, right down from Seward Air Force Base. And I often say we had more Jeeps there since Patton done maneuvers back during World War II. So I just want to thank you for what you do, and just pay tribute to my friend, the late Freddie Hahn. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir. And I know, so Sergeant Hahn was one of my soldiers, and I think it's something, I don't want to say it's unique to Tennessee, but it's something special we have here. When we have Gold Star families, we have 1,700 of them across our state in every county. And to see the outpouring of support once the population and the citizenry understand that they have a Gold Star family, whether it be a spouse or child in their community, they reach out and they do everything they can to make sure that the family recovers from just the gaping wound that they'll actually never recover from. But it's very close to my heart, is that family is, we consider it our responsibility to take care and look after every Gold Star family that resides in the borders, regardless of what service or branch that they come from. As long as they're in Tennessee's boundaries, they're our responsibility collectively. Thank you for asking that question, sir.
Well, generals and Mr. Sheehan, we thank you so much for being here, and I hope you gathered from the questions and the comments how very grateful we are in Tennessee to have you on our side and taking care of us, and we are very much appreciative. Thank you, and we will let you be excused, and we'll bring our other military folks forward. Have a great day.
Thank you, ma'am.
Welcome to the Department of Veteran Services. We're glad to have you guys with us here following on the heels of our other military folks. And we'll just ask you to, without further ado, get your presentation underway as we're running a bit behind. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman Hazelwood. Sorry for that brief family reunion we had going on up here. Vice Chair Baum, committee members, for having us here today to present our FY23 budget to y'all. I have with me today at the table my Assistant Commissioner for Benefits and Claims, Lorenzo Wills, my Deputy Commissioner, Mike Scholes, and my Director of State Operations, Tony McConnell. In the back there, I've got my HR Director, Dolores Keene, and my Legislative Liaison, Evan Ward. As you know, our mission is to serve veterans of all eras through passionate advocacy, informative outreach, and to provide them with an honorable final resting place. To accomplish this mission, we must have stability and professionalism in our workforce, especially in our frontline positions that conduct our statutory core requirements each day. In this state, our veteran population is just over 456,000, and according to the data recently provided by the VA, in FY20, nearly $5.4 billion was expended for all benefits to Tennessee veterans, dependents, and their families. Of that, $2.8 billion was compensation and benefits. In FY21, next slide. In FY21, Tennessee Department of Veterans interred 3,002 veterans and eligible family members at our 5 state veteran cemeteries. Next slide. The governor included 3 increases for our department in his FY23 budget. The first increase is 4 full-time positions and additional operational funds for our cemeteries, adding $186,000 to the personnel cost and another $558,000 in operational funding. We also will recognize an additional $250,000 in federal revenue for the burial reimbursements we received due to the increased interments. That brings the total for this suggested increase to $744,000. Second on this list is 3 additional staff to increase the capability of our benefits and appeals divisions. The cost of these positions is $348,000 in state appropriations. Each position in this request will increase the substantial amount of tax-free federal benefits flowing into Tennessee. Our last increase is a one-time $10 million grant for the Tennessee Wings of Liberty Museum. Our next slide talks about our increase that will add additional staff, plus ensure the vital maintenance of our cemeteries to position us for the projected increase of burials forecasted nationally through 2035. As you can see in the graph, we've experienced a 30% increase in burials over the last 5 years and a 20% increase in our headstone count. In fact, out of 113 state veteran cemeteries across our nation, our cemetery in Memphis currently ranks third in burial volume and is consistently ranked in the top 10. Our request for additional staff is based on the National Cemetery Administration's workforce model that currently demonstrates that Tennessee Department of Veteran Services is currently experiencing a deficit of 26 employees. Timing is everything, and this request is very relevant because of each of these 4 cemeteries, in addition to their normal burial volume and sustainment duties, will receive NCA inspections during FY22 and FY23. The next slide for the FY23 budget includes additional personnel to work in our benefits and appeals division. To highlight the workload increase, the graph below shows a projected 890 Board of Veteran Appeals hearings that will be scheduled this fiscal year. That's nearly a 67% increase over the high point of previous years. As you know, veterans benefits and claims, the system is very complicated, and the benefits are highly individualized, especially when compared to applying for many federal benefits. This is where our veteran resource coordinators and our appeals advocates perform one of our other core statutory functions. Our last budget increase is a grant request for $10 million for the Fort Campbell Kentucky Historical Foundation, a nonprofit 501c3 chartered in Tennessee, to build the now named Tennessee Wings of Liberty Museum at the junction of Tinytown Road and 41A in Clarksville, Tennessee. Once constructed, this will serve as a museum, conference center venue, and a K-12 civic educational institution. This next slide shows our 1% reduction plan if needed. It would be recognizing $71,500 in additional federal revenue and returning the like in state appropriations. To close our presentation, the Tennessee Department of Veteran Services increases for FY23 is $11,992,000. And our total budget ask is $19,515,000. Chairman Hazelwood, thanks again for allowing us to present our TDVS FY23 budget. And subject to your questions and comments of the committee, this concludes our briefing.
Thank you so much. We very much appreciate your brief briefing, and we'll get straight to our questions. Chairman Crawford.
Thank you, Madam Chair Lady. Currently, we have 4 homes in the state of Tennessee, and I know you're getting ready to open a 5th one down in Bradley County. Can you tell me when that will be operational and what the capacity that it can hold is?
Thank you. Good question. We're hoping that the one in Cleveland, Tennessee will be opened and operational no later than September of this year. It's a 108-bed facility, and we're very excited about that facility in Cleveland. We think it's going to serve that area very well. I know the local population is very excited about it. It's going to be based on kind of a chalet type design. When you get a chance to go down there and see it, you're going to be very impressed. It sets back into a big, nice hill there as a beautiful, beautiful building site. So we're really excited. Construction is supposed to be completed in June. We're starting to look at hiring some initial staff, and then we'll have to go through the VA certification process with those initial staff and a limited amount of residents, but we hope to be fully operational by September.
Chairman Crawford.
Thank you, Madam Chair Lady. Can you give us a brief update on the other 4 facilities, and are they in good shape? Are we at maximum capacity, or where we're at on those?
They are in good shape in terms of staff and the way they are operated. I've been in all 4 facilities. I'm extremely impressed with the staff there, the way they take care of the residents, the morale, the welfare of the residents, just the overall appearance of the way things are handled when you're there. Our census, we're not at full capacity right now. As you well know, the pandemic really was hard on all of long-term care facility industries. There were some situations that happened across the nation that really put them in a very scrutinized light, and we didn't have those terrible issues here in our state. They were able to mitigate that and maintain safety of our residents, but we're still working on trying to get the census up in each of those facilities. And we have census or bed space available, but they're running within operational budget. So it's something that we're working on and trying to increase.
Thank you, Madam Chair Lady.
And the physical status of those facilities, are there any outstanding maintenance needs, or I guess you don't need to look about it at additions since you're under capacity, but is there anything there that we need to be planning for down the road in terms of funding?
All of them have some capital maintenance items that they're going through, the paving in some places, roof repairs, HVAC system repairs, constant flow of that, ma'am. They're not, just waiting for it to all pile up and have to go do something all at once. So they constantly have a stream of repairs inside of the capital budget each year. In terms of expansion, now we do have the facility in Arlington, Eastern Shelby County, that we're going to open as well. And we're hoping to do a groundbreaking on that within the next 60 to 90 days. Just got that approved when the FY22 grant list came out. We were very excited about that. That's been a long time coming. A lot of folks in that area down there have put a lot of work into getting that established and helping the state get prepared for that. So we're real excited about getting the ground broke on that one.
That is exciting, as someone who talked about the Cleveland facility for years up here, because it's not just really Cleveland, it's Southeast Tennessee. And you're right, I went to the groundbreaking. It's an absolutely beautiful piece of property, and I saw the design. I haven't been back, but I hope to see it, maybe for the grand opening. I guess my question on the maintenance was more, are we adequately funding what you all need to maintain these facilities in a way that we can be proud to have our veterans there?
Yes, ma'am.
All right, thank you. Chairman Wendell.
Good morning. I want to start by saying thank you to your department for the way that you handle constituent inquiries. Your department is second to none. When I connect a constituent or a non-constituent with your department, you always follow up, and your employees always act in a professional manner. And I really appreciate that, because our veterans deserve no less. And again, I cannot reiterate enough how much it's appreciated that your department follows up on inquiries from my office. Every time the response it's appreciated. And I've got one question for you. In fiscal year 18-19, you were appropriated $600,000 to purchase property for a veteran cemetery in the Upper Cumberland. And we really appreciate that. And if you could, please give the people that Ryan Williams and I represent in the Upper Cumberland an update on what's going on with that cemetery.
Sure. First of all, thank you, Representative Wendell, for the comments about response time. We take that very seriously.
It's clear you do. I mean, you absolutely. I don't mean to interrupt you, but I'm going to say it again. It is appreciated by the families and individuals you help. I can assure you that.
Thank you. We take it seriously. We pride ourselves on that, and it's one of our CFG goals is to even get better at that. So thank you. In terms of Upper Cumberland Cemetery, again, another grassroots effort that everything's ready on the state side. In fact, we've purchased 127 acres there just east of Sparta on Country Club Road, and we're ready to start design and construction. However, when the list came out in FY22 for funding of cemeteries, there's other priorities that ranked higher. They funded the first 43 on the list, and we fell out at 66. So unless one of those other 43s don't provide matching funding or something, we probably will have to just wait and recompete in FY23. But we're ready to go as soon as we get that federal money up in Sparta, which will complete our strategic plan of having a national cemetery or a state veteran cemetery within 75 miles of each home of record of any veteran that lives in the state of Tennessee. And I know the people of that area are very excited about it. Again, it was a grassroots effort that brought that to bear, and we're very, very appreciative of that.
Thank you.
Chairman Hicks.
Thank you, Chair Lady. Commissioner Baker, thank you again for being here, you and your staff. Thank you again for what you all do. And we talked a little bit about the capital maintenance, and we were talking about the veterans homes, but I want to switch gears just a little bit and go back to the cemeteries. I think for this particular fiscal year, I think 12 million has been proposed. Can you talk a little bit about how is that money going to be spent in regards to maintenance?
So several items there with our cemeteries that we're looking at. Lions View, as you know, our oldest cemetery there in Knoxville, which is open only to second burials now, only 19 acres. It filled up pretty quick. Some drainage issues there in that cemetery that were really was held up by a house that when the state brought the property that was there that's been since condemned. We couldn't fix the drainage till we got the house demoed. We finally got the money to get the house demoed. We're going to do the drainage. As well as that, we've got several of our areas up there that's got to be repaved so that folks are not turning their ankles when they're out there trying to visit and things. So that's Lions View. We've got raise and realignment for our headstones at a couple other cemeteries. That's a very expensive proposition, but it's things that's got to be done. As time goes, those headstones shift because of ground movement. And as you well know, when we get those inspections, they want them lined up a certain way. So you have to constantly stay at that. So we have those planned. And then finally, we have two of our veteran cemeteries, the one here at Middle Tennessee and the one down in Memphis, both built in the early 90s. And just to be honest, have not had the care on the administrative buildings and the committal shelters that they really needed. And they just need a facelift, to be honest, so that when those families come in there to lay their loved ones to rest, they see a professional setting. And, you know, I think some of the furniture that we replaced just even last fall was maybe furniture that had been there for, 25 years. It just starts to really show age after that time. So we're going to go and do, some gutter work, some facing work, baseboards, just really give them an uplift, a facelift, you will, and try to make sure that they, not only that the grounds are pristine, but the administrative building and all the other associated items in those cemeteries are well maintained.
And just to follow up, you mentioned the caretaker's residence. What's going to happen once you get that demoed? Will you build another one back? What's the plan there?
At Lions View, we will not. In fact, that will be part of where that new drainage system goes in. So it will just be demoed and there will be nothing there.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much. Thank you again for being here.
Thank you.
Chairman Whitson.
Thank you, Madam Chairman, and good to see y'all here today, Commissioner, General Scholes, and team. I got to echo what Colonel Wendell said about responsiveness and support to our service members and their families. I just remember one Saturday, I called my good friend, General Scholes there, and we had an issue. Family needed help to make sure the member met the requirements, and sir, you jumped on it and made it happen. I appreciate it. I appreciate what you've done for our country and your dad too. I know I'm proud to call them constituents. And also I want to say, I appreciate y'all's leadership, your service focus to our service members. I know Chairman Vaughn and I really appreciate that after dealing with previous team, and what y'all have done to help service members and their families are honored 24/7 is really, really noted and appreciated, guys. My question is, the department requested 11 new positions to handle the increased appeals, outreach, and support but you mentioned earlier only 3 were funded for $348,000. With the current caseload, is 3 going to be enough, or do you need the full 11, sir?
Well, you've seen what the Board of Veteran Appeals caseload looks like. Now, obviously, all of those cases don't end up having hearings because people don't show or they change their mind and have to reschedule and some of that. We do know that we're going to need 1. The pandemic really changed hearings in terms of where they're conducted now. They used to have to all be in person. Now they can be virtual. I guess one of the blessings in the sky is it created an opportunity for us to go partner with 40 county service officers across the state and say, hey, we've got a veteran in your county, rather than make them drive into Nashville and get a motel and deal with traffic. Let's set up a virtual hearing where they can come to your county office and we'll do the hearing right there with the administrative law judge and our appeals advocate. So that has really it's been a win-win for our customers, not having to fight that traffic and do all that. And it's a very effective way to do it. Now, we're going to open up that federal building again in June and start doing in-person hearings. So we don't know what that caseload is going to be like. When they passed the Appeals Modernization Act back in 18, and that thing went into effect in 19, we thought there was a tidal wave coming. In fact, the department had asked for more appeals advocate then. It didn't work out that way because of the pandemic and everybody having to reshuffle the deck and reimagine how we could do appeals. I think the wave is still headed our way because the new Modernization Act gives folks 3 different lanes to go in. They can, do supplemental information. They can ask for another person at the VA just to do a direct review of their case, maybe get a different result, or they can still get in line for a hearing. That wait time right now is still around 672 days. We're trying to reduce that. And I think that you'll see going forward that will be a combination of in-person and virtual hearings. It's not just the appeal advocate. It is also the folks that have to set this up. That's where you get into a lot of logistics. You got to find the veteran. You got to make sure you got good comms with them. Call them, say, hey, you got your hearing on Thursday. You're going to be there. Make sure all their case documents are in place, all their evidence requirements. And that just takes time because you're tracking people down and trying to make sure that they're ready to go and that everything is synchronized and coordinated so that they get a great hearing and get a great opportunity to get their case overturned. So I think you'll see that grow. But we want to make sure that we, incrementally get that right. I'd hate to get a bunch of help there and then not have that caseload to support it. So I think 1 is going to help us determine, but this time next year, I think we'll know even more.
Thank you, General. And other question I have, in 2020, Public Chapter 531 was established to require the department to provide training in suicide prevention to certain employees. And can you provide an update on this training program? And do you have the resources you need to sustain it and implement it?
Yes, we are sustaining that and we are implementing it. In fact, I want to thank the General Assembly. That took place obviously before my time. But what we did with our state training officer, we went and we got a company named Psych Armor who put together a suicide prevention virtual training for us. Now, every employee of TDVS has to take that training. Also, since we're the training accreditation entity for the state, all the county service officers take that as well every year as part of their accreditation. So now you've got 200 folks out there on the front lines that's dealing with veterans every day and have that training in their hip pocket and get it every year. So yes, I think that's effective. I'm glad the General Assembly passed that. And we're going to try to further that and try to get the suicide rate among our veterans down. We were in the 2019 data out of VA. We were 40% on veteran suicide rate in our state. That's 9 points higher than any other state in the southern region. We got to get after that, and we've got to change that. And, the VA's got a program. They're trying to reduce their suicide rate by 20% by 2025. And we're going to match that and go 25%, go up above that and try to reduce it here in our state. And we're going to need everybody's help to do that. It cannot just be done by state government or federal government. It takes everybody getting involved, and that's why we're looking at their community engagement team that the VA is building now all across the state and trying to partner with them and other agencies out there, private agencies, clergy in local areas, wherever we might find people that can help us identify veterans who have become isolated, get them in the VA healthcare system. We know that 2/3 of the veterans that commit suicide are not drawing any kind of VA benefit or in the VA healthcare system. Once they're in that system, that screening process takes place to where they can be identified, hopefully, before something tragic happens, and we can get them the kind of the treatment they need. And so, you know, that's what we're trying to get after and trying to change that rate in this state.
Thank you. And just for the record, I want Representative Shaw to know that Country Club Road is in Representative Sherrill's district. I don't have a Country Club Road in my district.
Thank you, Representative Shaw, for not rising to the bait. We could say that all the roads in Chairman Whitson's district, regardless of their names, we do know that they are heated in the winter and air cooled in the summer. General Baker, just a couple of things I wanted to comment on. The county services, we've got a great one in Hamilton County. It's made a real difference in working with our veterans, and thank you all for the coordination that goes forward with that. But you mentioned a really stark and terrifying number with the suicide rates, and the fact that once they're in the system, we're able to get people the help that they need and to reduce that rate. But is there something that we can do either as a body or individually back home to help get folks into that system? Where are the entry points and how does that take place?
Right. Well, I would say, first of all, most of your areas in the state, whether it's Southeast Tennessee, West Tennessee, Northeast, you have a Veterans Coalition Council that meets. A lot of times that's going to be made up of your CSO in that county. We're going to have a representative there, all kinds of agencies inside the county, both public, nonprofit, that are there to just talk about veterans issues. There are usually going to be a VA rep there as well. You know, it's not that hard to get in the VA system, but just finding out the folks, you know, there's about 19 million living veterans out there, about 9 million in the VA healthcare. So it's under, 50%. And they don't even have to use the system. They just get them enrolled because that's going to get some stuff started. I've got my benefits and claims assistant commissioner here. Belinda, you have to add anything on that?
Hello? Oh, yes, sir. Great question. What the commissioner said is true. I mean, what we're doing is, everything for the veteran, his family member, and his dependents. If the veteran needs assistance in any way, I got 12 field officers overseeing 95 counties. So anything that we can do for the veteran, we're out there doing it. From Mountain Home all the way to Memphis. That's my responsibility now for the last, 5 months anyway. So anything the veteran need, any way we can do it, we're out there to do it. Thank you.
Thank you. Just the fact that we have 10 million veterans who are not connected to that service, and obviously we have a pool of people that we need to connect with in some way or market to. Chairman Todd, you have a question.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And mine, it deals with some things I'm not sure you mentioned. I never caught it if you did. And it's services at the cemetery for the families when they're burying their loved ones, honor guard services. Can you describe to me, and I'm wondering if there's an increase in the budget to help pay some expenses. I know we have some groups across the state that volunteer to do this and fill in when the paid personnel are not available because of the volume. So are there any resources that can help reimburse these groups for their their services to the state and to the veteran community, at least to get their costs covered.
Thank you. You're right. The services provide that most of the time. Well, that's Army, Marines, Air Force. But there are some gaps in that. And our partners that volunteer their time and effort to do that are just great Americans and great Tennesseans because they don't get paid anything. It's completely voluntary. And in fact, it costs them gas money and other expenses to go do these because they're not all just local that they attend and cover down for. So first of all, they are to be commended for what they do. Now, to your question, no, we do not have any resources in our budget. And I guess the complexity about that is, even if there were resources available, we don't have, the personnel to administer a program like that inside of Tennessee Department of Veteran Services. We would have to go back and do some analysis of what that would require for us to be able to administer that and do it the right way. Because obviously, anytime you start paying out money to private citizens, you're going to have the audit and all the different things that you need to make sure that you're doing it correctly. So no, we don't have the resources, or do we have the personnel to administer that at this time?
Chairman Todd, you have a follow-up?
Very quickly, I would just ask you if you could maybe do some research and look at what volume those groups, those volunteers are actually bringing to the veteran community. I don't know if they're 10%, 1%, 50% of the funerals that are being performed across the state. But I know some folks in my area are doing a lot of them. And I don't think they're just on top of what's already been provided by the services themselves, armed services themselves, but would like some research on that and bring that to us, because I think that should be one of our priorities for your organization to provide that service, again, to fill in the gaps. Thank you, sir.
And I wanted to go back. Representative Sparks has a question, and we'll get to him. But you had mentioned earlier the appeals, and that some of them are taking as long as nearly 2 years, 600 plus days. So just a question: if I'm a veteran and I have been turned down for some request, I appeal it, I wait my turn, and 678 days or whatever the number was later, my appeal is the previous decision is overturned, my appeal is upheld, and I'm due benefits. Do those benefits start at the date that the appeal was overturned, or are they backdated?
They do start at the date the appeal was filed. So, when you get your appeal or your claim decision and you're denied, that you file a notice of disagreement, and then you file your appeal. And correct me if I'm wrong, Lorenzo, but it will go back. In fact, and I know this is almost unbelievable in some ways, but we've had some appeals that have been on hold so long. When they did get awarded, it was $1 million retro pay. We had a claim other day down in West Tennessee, in fact, of a Vietnam veteran who had bladder cancer back in the early 2000s, had filed a claim and only got a 20%. One of our claims agent picked this up in coordination with the county service officer because all of the presumptives now that the VA made due to cancer last year, they refiled that claim, not an appeal, but refiled the claim because the VA made a mistake on the initial decision. And within 45 days, the veteran got the claim overturned, and he's going to get $528,000. So those are life-changing events for families who no doubt have been, exposed to some really high medical bills and other things. And we're just, it makes us feel good when we hear those things. I wanted to share it with you. It don't happen every day in that amount. But like I said in the beginning of my testimony here, it's $2.8 billion a year come into this state for compensation and benefits. They go to individuals. They don't come down in a block grant or something, but that's still money that's coming into the state, and it's tax-free. So we're proud to be part of helping do that, as well as our county service officers.
Well, it's still, obviously, if you're in that position, the uncertainty of waiting and the extended period is not a good thing, but is good to know at least once the determination is made that your appeal is valid, that the dollars are retroactive. Representative Sparks.
Thank you, General Baker, for being here, and Mr. Mike Scholes. I've seen you come over to our Veterans Court, and I appreciate y'all being there. I even seen you gave some of those guys and gals hugs, and I think the Judge McFarland was even kidding about getting a hug from a general. That was cool. Loved your conviction and loved your compassion as well. You know, many of us are big advocates of the drug courts, mental health courts, and other areas like that. And we all know that many of these folks that are dealing with drug and alcohol problems have previous trauma. Recently, Representative Sexton and I had some music therapists up here, music therapist. And I know it's kind of odd to talk about music therapy, but Monroe, Carroll, Vanderbilt, Children's, some of those music therapists were up. And it's kind of been proven that music therapy can help, whether it's dealing with Alzheimer's patients, Parkinson's. And I had a veteran come up and she said she had got off prescription drugs and was just working with these music therapists. I know it sounds odd because, you know, I often think of my late father that World War II flew 24 bombing raids over Germany. He'd have said, just get over it, move on, you know. But trauma is real, as we know, and the correlation to addiction and alcoholism is just off the chart. So thank you all and look forward to you being at our next Veterans Court. Thank you, sir.
You know, the vet courts, over 400 veterans in this state a year take advantage of those. We've got 10 right now. Got another area or two that's looking at trying to get one started. And those are a tremendous benefit to those communities out there. A lot of those veterans actually get a second chance at turning their life around. When you go hear some of their testimonies or their graduation speeches, it'll put you in tears almost to hear how close they were at that going down that wrong path and getting a second chance and getting another chance at doing the right thing. But you know, there's several groups out there. Operation Stand Down's got a young man. They gather over there one night a week. Now they play instruments. There's Operation Songs out there, that another nonprofit that they get together. Veterans get together. They write songs about their experiences when they were deployed and different things. And you're right. It's a healing balm that sometimes maybe you can't get in other ways, but anything that can help turn that corner and get someone's life that's headed down the wrong path in another direction, we're all for it.
Representative Shaw, we're going to ask you to briefly wrap us up as we have kept these fine gentlemen overtime.
Thank you, ma'am, and I will do that. Thank you, Commissioner. I wanted to just back up a moment to Chairman Todd's question that he asked. I guess I'm wondering, because I've seen much of this, and I've seen nothing but dignity in all of your gardens everywhere, and these folks are doing an excellent job. This program we're talking about, helping people out, if you had the resources, could not be done through the VFWs?
Well, I don't know how you would get a state appropriation to them unless it was through some kind of grant, potentially, maybe. You know, and I don't want to speak for General Holmes. You know, the military department does have folks that do it for the National Guard, soldiers, airmen who are on orders throughout the year to do that. I don't know if that would potentially be a mechanism that could be utilized. I've never thought about going through the VFWs to do that. Could be a possibility. It's from our department's perspective, and that's really everything else is just speculation on my part. We just don't have the resources, nor do we have the budget to do something like that right now.
Well, thank you for your answer, and thank you, Madam Chair, for letting me have this time. But I do think it's really, we ought to look into it, because the expense, it's enormous. I can tell you it is. Thank you.
Thank you.
Gentlemen, again, we appreciate your time this morning. We apologize, and ladies, for keeping you a bit overdue, but I know that there were there's just a lot of interest in what you all do, and uh, a lot of gratefulness from this body and from the legislature as a whole for the service that you provide. So thank you again for being here, and we look forward to seeing you back and hearing next year about how many more people are involved in the Strong Act and the other positive things that you've got going on. Hopefully those length of those appeals will be down and we can address those things as well. So thanks again.
Thank you, Chairman.
We're going to ask Director Nolan to bring her team to the front from the Human Rights Commission. And Director Nolan, I'll ask you to share with my constituent and your board member, Robin Derryberry, how sad I am that she didn't make the trip over this morning to be with us here today. But you're here. We're grateful for it, and we look forward to hearing what you have to tell us about the budget for the Human Rights Commission for the upcoming budget year. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. Greetings to the chair and committee members. Thank you for this opportunity to speak on behalf of the Tennessee Human Rights Commission. My name is Muriel Nolan. I'm the interim executive director for Tennessee Human Rights Commission as of February of this year. I came to the agency last year from the district attorney's office in Shelby County after 18 years. I have with me today to my right our fiscal officer, Alan Staley. To my left, I have General Counsel Don Cummings and Associate General Counsel William Wade. I'll have a brief opening, and then we will take any questions that you all have. A little bit about the agency. We are charged with the enforcement of the Tennessee Human Rights Act and the Tennessee Disability Act, which together prohibit discrimination in housing, employment, and public accommodations on the basis of race, color, creed, national origin, religion, sex, disability, familiar status in our housing unit, and age over 40 in the employment division. The commission also ensures the state of Tennessee's compliance with Title VI of the Civil Rights Act of 1964, which prohibits discrimination based on race, color, national origin by state agencies receiving federal financial assistance. The agency's mission is to safeguard individuals from discrimination through education and enforcement. And the commission is governed by a nine-member board of commissioners serving staggered 6-year terms appointed by the governor, lieutenant governor, and the Speaker of the House to represent 3 grand divisions of the state. A 29-member staff of the human rights representatives include investigators, attorneys, and other professional support to assist us to carry out the day-to-day operations of educating the public concerning their rights and responsibilities and conducting thorough investigations. Our staff duties include assessing complaints, providing mediation and conciliations, conducting investigations of discrimination, and education and outreach. When necessary, the commission will file litigation to resolve complaints. And the commission maintains a central office in Nashville and has regional offices in Knoxville, Chattanooga, and Memphis. For fiscal year 2023, the governor has recommended a budget of $3,121,900 for the Human Rights Commission, and that is comprised of $2,152,100 in state appropriations and $969,800 in federal funding. No reductions were taken, and this amount does include a cost increase or improvement in the amount of $218,000 to establish 4 new recurring positions, which which will be 3 human rights representatives and 1 administrative service assistant 2. This would increase the number of full-time positions from 29 to 33. These requested positions will assist in assessing inquiries and investigating complaints of discrimination in a thorough and timely manner, thereby utilizing more resources on education and outreach. The commission needs these positions to reduce inventory of age cases and to provide consistent services to the citizens of Tennessee. These duties are directly tied to the commission's strategic plan. And that concludes my opening. If anyone has questions.
Thank you, Director Nolan.
Thank you.
We appreciate your comments. We have a few questions on the list. Maybe I'll start us out. You just mentioned the 4 new positions.
Yes.
And that's designed to help with the backlog of cases or to help with the increased caseload. I guess my question is, how many cases do we have in a typical year and what is our backlog?
Yes. I'm sorry, I have so many stats in front of me. Let me grab them. For fiscal year 21, fiscal year 20 to 21, we had approximately 6,000 calls from the public. We had 662 inquiries. We accepted 405 complaints, and that's including housing and employment. We closed 288 complaints. We resolved, we had 43 settlements, mediations, and conciliations. And a little bit about the backlog. Starting the beginning of calendar year 2020, there it started to become an increase in inventory. And that was attributed to turnover. We started the pandemic March of 2020 with 4 positions that were vacant, and those were critical positions to the agency. We had a deputy director, in addition to a compliance officer that resigned at the start of the pandemic. And so what we saw was, coupled with the increase of the inventory and the turnover has increased our inventory, because it takes approximately 4 to 6 months whenever we have a human rights representative or an investigator to resign. It takes approximately 4 months to fully train and develop that investigator so that they're able to have a complete caseload. So we started to see that the turnover was affecting the inventory. In addition, because we do investigate employment cases, not only did the pandemic affect us because of our staff and the challenges that they had with the pandemic, but we also were affected because the employment agencies that we require most of our information about their policies and about the complaints were also having challenges as it related to the pandemic. So a lot of the people that we needed to get contact information would be out for extended leave, either for an illness or taking care of someone affected by the pandemic. So it was kind of just like the perfect storm for us, and we are asking for these positions so that we're able to, if we ever were to have this situation, we're able to maintain our day-to-day operations and focus more on education and outreach.
Okay, thank you for that. Next on our list of questions is Chairman Garrett.
Thank you, Chairman Baum. Appreciate that. Thank you all for being here. Couple of questions. That you said you had 6,000 inquiries and then you had 400 or 500 actual investigations. Is did I understand that correct?
We had about 6,000 phone calls, emails, and the majority of them do not amount to actual inquiries that we have to process through intake. But and I don't know if it's because of the name of the agency, but we do receive a lot of phone calls whenever you have particular interest in the news or with the EEOC or with the pandemic. Um, the citizens look at us as a resource. So we have to receive those phone calls, and we kind of refer individuals to other areas within the state that may be able to assist them.
So that takes quite a bit of, I would assume, time to weed through the 5,500 emails or calls or whatnot that you're not going to respond to, or at least is there a response? It's just there's nothing there that you see a complaint that you all have authority to handle.
Well, out of the,
I guess I'm going to interrupt. I guess what's that process when you get that many inquiries? How do you winnow it down to what's an actual complaint that you all then have authority over?
well, we get the 6,000 number includes the inquiries, the phone calls. Out of those, we refer them to online, or they can walk into the agency to fill out a complaint. But we only accepted we had 600 inquiries. Out of those, we only accepted 405. So a lot of the phone calls and information we seek, the majority of those are people seeking help with other agencies. But we do record those phone calls, and sometimes we they complaints and respondents are wanting information as well. But we do record all of the phone calls and emails that come within our agency.
And those numbers, I think you said, were 2021, right? The number of inquiries,
Yes.
and that was obviously during COVID and the pandemic. What if this past year or even years before, has COVID increased or decreased the amount of complaints that you're receiving? In other words, 4 years ago, before COVID, or 3 years ago was even out there, what would be your complaint or inquiries that you all would be facing then? Did COVID increase or decrease the amount of complaints that you're dealing with?
Well, the stats that I have for the last 3 years, the numbers are similar. It appears COVID has increased our phone calls and people seeking information. We have seen the EEOC has had a decrease in their complaints. So we're not seeing necessarily an increase in complaints, but we are seeing more intakes and more inquiries on our housing division as it relates to COVID. Of course, our stats are not, they don't stay the same depending on what's going on in the state or in the country. We did have an influx of calls and inquiries concerning vaccine mandates, and I believe that was around September, October. We've not had that increase since, but the calls and inquiries for a 2-month period began to increase, and so now we're seeing things are kind of are similar to the last 3 years of stats.
Thank you very much. Appreciate that.
Next up is Chairman Sparks.
Thank you, Director Nolan. The commission reported in a balance of 200,000 in the commission's contingency fund. Can you explain how this fund will be used?
Yes, if I could defer to Mr. Staley.
Yes, that is a budget carry forward that has been established for several years. It's used as a safety net in the event that revenues, something unexpected happens and the agency has any issues closing. The carry forward maximum is $200,000, and that is the current balance, so that it's fully funded and there if it's needed.
Chairman Todd.
Thank you, Chairman Baum. You mentioned the volume of cases that you're dealing with, and in the last several years, it's remained steadily the same, roughly. Um, and I'm curious to know on some of those cases, the ones that you actually investigate and have some recommended actions on. Have you had, with the former director, who I understand just left recently, have you had cases where that director asked personnel to do something different with those cases than what was recommended?
I'm not sure I understand your question. Do you mean, have we done um, an accounting of the procedures of the processes of when complaints come in?
Well,
You
I'm
mean?
I'm mainly thinking about the volume of work you have, and if you had a director during that period of time that was wanting to, let's say, spend more time on cases than what the staff was recommending, then obviously that runs up the clock. There's more personnel needed, there's more hours needed for those cases versus saying, there's nothing here to adjudicate, there's nothing further recommended. But if that director was saying, I want to go anyway, I want to proceed with some action anyway, then that's going to take quite a bit of time. And I understood from a meeting recently in my office with you that that had been the case. I don't know to what number, I don't know to what extent, but that does concern me that that has existed in the past, in the very recent past, where citizens have had cases brought against them when they were actually recommended by your legal staff to be dismissed. There's nothing there, but yet those cases proceeded. So I'm wondering just how much in this budget is going toward frivolous type pursuits.
Thank you for that question, Representative Todd. I have committed to the board that I would help in any capacity necessary. I have began in the first 30 days since February the 15th. And after speaking with you I've met with the transition team, and I've explained to them that we are going to have to refocus and reimagine just about every area of the agency. Um, the executive team are skilled, and I believe that they should be afforded a little more opportunity to have input within the agency. And I'm not sure that that was done prior to me coming here. My particular management style is that of being collaborative. So we are, to answer your question, we are in the process of, and I've told staff, we're going to assess not just with our team within the agency, but our stakeholders, our partners, members of the House and the Senate. We need to figure out what has not worked, and what we need to do about it. What we need to do about it. So there are very particular, specific recommendations that the General Counsel has made concerning your concern, and I'll defer with her to give you an overview of the recommendations that she's made to kind of address some of those concerns.
Well, and we don't have to get into the
Okay.
weeds right here. I
Yes.
really wanted the committee to be aware that there's a situation going on here where we've seen over several years an increased budget every year, almost every year. Yet, I would argue that a significant amount of money is being spent in that time period on things that are frivolous, that are pursuing things that were recommended not to be pursued. And so I would be looking for a reduction in the budget now versus what we've had in the past with this change of guard and hopefully a change of direction. But that's all. I don't get into the weeds anymore here, but I have a great concern about how this commission has been operated in the past, the money that's been spent, and then the brunt of what I would consider abuse that some of our citizens have felt as a result of that. And I know personally some that have gotten that brunt, very, very much undeserved. And so I just bring that to the committee's attention, and I appreciate your time today.
Okay, thank you, Director Nolan and your team for your comments today. We appreciate them. And next up with budget hearings will be the Office of the Post-Conviction Defender. So we'll invite that department up. As before, we'll ask you to state your names for the record, and then you can give us your initial opening comments.
Good afternoon, or possibly still good morning. My name is Justina Scalpone, and I'm the director of the Post-Conviction Defender Office. And with me today is Ms. Tracy Pointer, and she is our fiscal director. Mr. Rebel Johnson, who is the chair of our Oversight Commission, unfortunately could not make it. He is in Cleveland, Tennessee. I was going to make a few opening remarks, and then we'll be happy to answer any questions the committee may have. So just as a reminder, we are a small independent judicial agency. We represent clients on death row and state collateral proceedings. That's mostly state post-conviction proceedings in court and also in clemency proceedings, and that is in front of the governor's staff. Our budget this year, our request is $2.9 million, and it has been fully included in the governor's budget. We have one improvement that we are asking for, and that is $25,300, and that is for a mandatory statutory step raises for attorneys. Just very, very brief background regarding the majority of our work, and that is a post-conviction process. That is a legal proceeding that is available to all incarcerated indigent defendants. However, our office was established in 1995 only to represent people in capital proceedings. And that is because these are the most serious cases. They require the highest level of scrutiny. They're most legally complex and time intensive. So it makes sense for an organization that develops an expertise in that area to handle those cases. Post-conviction is in essence a mistake catching mechanism. We review the cases. When a case arrives in our office, we investigate the crime, we investigate the social history of the client, which is relevant to the sentencing determination, and then we investigate the legal process itself in the case so far. So from the arrest through the pretrial proceedings, trial, and direct appeal, which is the first limited appeal in the case. Essentially, what we're trying to do is make sure that jurors who make these decisions as far as whether somebody is actually guilty of capital murder and whether that person should live or die, that they do have all the relevant facts and evidence and then are properly instructed on the law to make constitutionally sound decisions. In Tennessee, roughly about 60% of capital cases have been overturned since the late 70s. About 40% of those have been in state post-conviction proceedings. If the mistakes are not caught in the state system and the conviction and a sentence are affirmed, the case proceeds to federal habeas proceedings in federal court, and we no longer represent clients at that point. That is typically the federal defender's office that takes over the representation, and those are even more complex and lengthier proceedings than state post-conviction. So typically, definitely it is better if the mistakes are caught sooner rather than later. Besides direct representation of clients, we also have an educational and legal resource function. So we do provide training for attorneys that represent capital clients in trial and direct appeal proceedings. We provide non-case specific consultations. So we have a lot of attorneys that reach out to us. some with capital cases, some with not capital cases. But especially in capital cases, it's a non-case specific advice because we don't want to conflict ourselves out as counsel in case that case proceeds to post-conviction a few years later. And then with training, we do provide, we organize together with Tennessee Association of Criminal Defense Lawyers, the annual capital defense training, and that is for attorneys who want to be certified as capital defenders in the state. And with that, I will end my remarks, but I will be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. We appreciate very much you being with us here today and giving us an overview. We do have questions. Representative Lynn, you're first on my list.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I'm wondering, what is the current caseload of your agency right now?
Right now, it's 14 cases.
14 cases. And have you dispensed with any in the last year or finalized any in the last year? Or?
I believe it's one case. Yes.
What impact did the pandemic have on your caseload or working conditions or anything like that? I'm sure maybe some of you had to work at home or.
Sure. So our caseload increased by 3 cases last year. There are cases that are pending in the trial court, which have been delayed by the pandemic. So there might be more of an influx of cases in the coming year or two once, maybe closer to 3. Once those cases get caught up. As far as how it affected our work for about a year, we didn't do travel. So what we did, we continued to investigate cases and used electronic resources as much as possible. And obviously there's a lot of record review and record collection, and we're talking about close to 100,000 pages of records. So that's what we focused on. And we started being back in the field in May of 21 and are catching up on all the fieldwork investigation.
Representative Garrett.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think you all do extraordinary work. I know as I'm a lawyer, I don't do anything in the criminal world. So I'm curious, when you said you had 14 cases, what does one case, how long does that typically take? Because you said it before and you alluded to in your comments that you have the most complicated cases if you take on a case in post-conviction relief status of where that is. So if you followed one case on average, how long do you spend on it? Then how long does that case usually last?
Yes. So typically on average, cases last 6 years in post-conviction, and that's about 3 to 4 years in what we call the trial stage. So that's the case. That's when we're actually investigating, all the discoveries happening, and then we have a hearing in court. And then the hearing is in front of the same judge that presided, usually, not always, but usually in front of the same judge that presided over the trial. So once that judge makes the determination, there typically will be an appeal. We might be appealing, or the state might be appealing what the judge held, and that lasts about 2 to 3 years.
So even though you have 14 cases, and if you add another one, each year, how often do you add a case per year? You may have said
on
that.
average about 2.
Okay.
Yes.
Which then again, that's a years long commitment.
Yes.
So kind of the question that I have is, according to the governor's budget, it looks like they're just giving the step up increases, but what else out there besides that you could potentially use for your office for the good work that you all do?
Well, one thing that we know that is very problematic and that we are missing is expert resources. But that is not something that's actually in our budget.
I purposely interrupt. Could you elaborate what you mean? I know what you mean by that, but could you elaborate what that expert resources means?
Okay, so in capital cases, as in a lot of civil complex cases as well, there need to be expert witnesses or experts that help develop the defense. They're expert witnesses that testify at trial on behalf of the defense. They're expert witnesses that testify on behalf of the prosecution at the state. So when we get the case, we also need expert assistance to develop the constitutional grounds for constitutional violations. So for just an example, people who are intellectually disabled are exempt from the death penalty. We as lawyers and our investigators, even we have social workers, working in our office, we are not qualified to make a lot of these determinations. So we have to work with mental health experts that can analyze the data, the records, that can go and evaluate our client, issues like that. So that's just one example. In Tennessee, the experts are paid for from indigent representation fund, so they're not paid from our budget, and the rates are very low. So we have a hard time finding experts. We have to, do a lot of investigation and try to sell our case to experts to agree to work for a reduced rate. And sometimes the way the process works is that we go in front of ex parte, in front of the judge presiding over the post-conviction, and explain why we need funding for the expert. The judge is going to then issue an order saying, okay, you are constitutionally, you have a constitutional right to that expert to establish the grounds that you are of constitutional violations. And at that point, that order goes up to the administrative office of the courts, and then typically, not always, it gets approved. Sometimes it gets denied, and then there are problems. So it's not the cleanest, most simple process, and that's really a big issue for us. But I think it's a big issue generally across maybe not in all cases, but in a lot of more serious cases, because capital cases are not the only ones where expert assistance is needed. You might have non-capital, sexual or assault, murder cases where the same is needed, but the funds are not really there.
Right. Well, thank you very much for elaborating on that. We really appreciate
Sure.
what you do. Thank you.
And just to follow up on that, these are complex cases. They're long-term, but we've heard a lot of testimony about that. This, I guess, the fairly lengthy procedure for getting expert witnesses, first proving the need and then getting the approval and then finding them, et cetera. How much time do you estimate that adds to the process?
Several months.
Just makes the long process longer.
Yes.
All right, thank you. Chairman Williams.
Thank you. I just wanted clarification. You said something, maybe I heard you wrong, but I think you said since the 70s that 60% of the cases that you see have been overturned. Is that?
Yes, that's correct. Since 78, 79.
So based upon your work, would you say that we got it right more than we got it? I mean, we got it wrong more than we got it right?
Well, I would qualify it based upon our work, because our office has only been around since 95. But
Yeah.
I mean, you could say that, yes, we got it right, or the state got it right maybe in 40% of the cases. I mean, there are cases out there where the mistakes may not get addressed.
Right. So I guess as a follow-on to that, I guess the challenge that you have is you're only dealing with capital cases. I'm assuming that most of these revisions, are they because the technology of DNA, or is that majority of the 60%? Or?
The majority, the majority in post-conviction is ineffective assistance of counsel. So that's the key constitutional violation that usually is found in those cases. Sometimes Brady violations, which is persecutorial misconduct. And then there are trial errors, because besides state post-conviction, when we're looking in direct appeal, so that's about 45% have been in direct appeal, that is just confined to the review of the record. So there's no additional investigation. It's basically just looking at whether there are any trial errors.
Okay. Thank you.
Well, thank you. It's very sobering, that statistic that you just mentioned that Chairman Williams reiterated. I think the only thing worse than the appropriate person or persons not receiving the appropriate punishment is having that punishment meted out inappropriately. So particularly, some things can be corrected or at least mediated if you're put to death for a crime that you didn't commit, or that you shouldn't have been allowed to be sentenced to death for, then that is, irrevocable a mistake. So we appreciate, and I think all of those in Tennessee who really stopped to think about this issue should be very grateful for the services that your department provides. We thank you for being here today.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And thank you for considering as our budget request.
Happy to do so. You always, when you come before this body, you always have very modest requests, very reasonable requests, and we appreciate that.
Thank you.
All right, friends and neighbors, we have our last budget hearing, not only for the day, but our last budget hearing. Director Thomas, don't let that put any pressure on you at all, but welcome, come forward, and you have at least one sketchy person there with you. We will, but you didn't say it was inaccurate. In all seriousness, it's good to see you, Mr. Boring, although in a new role, and welcome. And Director Thomas, if you want to get straight into your presentation, then we will wrap these proceedings up.
Yes, thank you so much, Madam Chairman. Mary Beth Thomas, Director of the Sports Wagering Advisory Council, and I have with me Keith Boring, as you recognized, and Stephanie Maxwell, our General Counsel. Thank you, and I will try to be brief, although I have prepared a few things to tell you all about the work we've been doing. This is your last budget presentation, but this is our very first ever, so we have quite a few things to share. As y'all know, there are 20, or you may not know, there are 25 states that oversee sports wagering throughout the country. Since state-by-state legalization began in 2018, $104 billion has been wagered nationwide. This is a growing and developing industry that we are seeing rapid changes in. At the end of 2021, there were 9 sports gaming operators active and licensed in Tennessee, generating approximately $2 billion in wagers throughout the year. Since taking over regulatory authority in January, we've licensed 4 additional online sports books, and we have 1 pending application. We've also been contacted by several others who are interested in applying to be registered in Tennessee and licensed. While we don't have data to compare year-to-year handle yet, wagering volume, we can tell you that as of January 1st, 2021, there were 238,000 player accounts. By January 2022, that number had grown to 1,023,590. I think we have quite a bit of room to grow too with the amount of Tennesseans in the state. So to give you a comparison, I think the lottery told you this at their budget hearing. They had $2.1 billion in lottery ticket sales in 2021. So to let you all know a little bit about how we've gotten to where we are now, I was hired on November 1st, and Keith and Stephanie were the very first 2 that joined me at the Sports Wagering Advisory Council. In these last few months, we have been very hard at work drafting and publishing 2 sets of rules with public hearings to hear from industry and interested stakeholders. We transferred a vast accounting system and reporting function for not only wagering data, but exclusion information that relates to responsible gaming initiatives from the lottery to the Sports Wagering Advisory Council, built out a new IT storage function. As I mentioned, vetted and licensed 4 new operators, renewed existing operators, and hired key staff to oversee licensing compliance and investigations, as well as accounting, IT, and legal. We've engaged in significant industry and stakeholder outreach and developed quite a few processes and procedures to ensure regulatory compliance. We've also begun development of a sports league and athlete integrity working group. So our budget, we're requesting a total of 20 positions, which is 19 more than what the original fiscal note stated. I can go into as much or as little detail as you all would like about what I would like those positions to do, and I'll try to keep it high level and let y'all ask questions if you'd like to hear. But we have a really thorough statute that you all passed in 2019 that requires our office to review operator applicants to ensure they can demonstrate by clear and convincing evidence good character, honesty, and integrity, as well as financial stability and responsibility. In order to do this, we have to go through voluminous data application files from not only an organizational standpoint, but also from a key personnel standpoint. So if you are part of an operator who has any sort of authority to execute your judgment or make decisions that impact the integrity of sports wagering operations, you are vetted just like the organization. That means we look at capitalization, access to funding, credit history, parent and subsidiary organizations, business projections, prior gaming experience, anticipated revenue, tax returns, bank statements, and other historical financial documents. There is a great deal of review that goes on to make sure that we are welcoming good operators to our state. We also have a TBI, FBI national background check, as well as a comprehensive background investigation with character references and, a very thorough review of employment history, civil litigation, obviously criminal history, and any involvement in anything that would raise a red flag. Our legal and IT teams must also confirm that an operator meets all requirements of the Act and rules, meaning they have internal controls in place that prevent access by minors and prohibited participants, that they support responsible gaming and self-exclusion capacity, that they monitor and report sports integrity issues, and that they have a robust geolocation system to prevent wagering across state lines, which is illegal, and also to assist us with identifying fraud. We also require that they have internal controls that assist with identifying money laundering and other types of criminal activity. Our team performs technical audit reviews of systems and software certifications, and this is for both the operator and for vendors who apply to operate in the state, so platform operators. After licensure, we work with them on a multitude of daily functions, such as approving wagering markets and different gaming events, reviewing promotions to make sure that they're in line with our constitutional limitations, working with national integrity monitoring groups to make sure that there are not any untoward activities going on with inside information, reviewing and resolving player complaints. You might imagine that there are some complaints that are made. Often when players lose, they have the right to appeal to the operator, and if they are not resolved in a way that they believe to be satisfactory, they file a complaint with our office, and Stephanie assists them with resolving it by working with the operator. We are also on a daily basis working very closely with their accounting department to make sure that they are filing daily, weekly, and monthly wagering reports of all wagers received, any promotional credit, any wagers paid out, and that they are calculating their reserve requirements appropriately to protect Tennesseans. We also manage the self-exclusion function of players who want to take a break from gaming for a while or permanently, so that if you want to exclude from one operator, you can submit that information and our office will distribute it to all operators if desired, so that you can stop a problem before it starts. We have recently hired a retired FBI investigator who is conducting investigations using the geolocation software access that we have and all of the back office access to each individual platform provider to make sure that everybody is following the rules. On top of all of the above, there's so much interest in Tennessee that we are receiving phone calls, emails, communications every day about people who want to become involved in some way, either as a vendor or an operator. and we are honored to have that role. So our budget is built from dedicated revenue that the licensees pay each year. Each licensee is required to pay $750,000 as an annual licensing fee. So originally, at the beginning of when I started in November 2021, there were 8 operators in Tennessee generating $6 million in annual licensure fees that go by statute to pay operational expenses. This does not touch any of the privilege tax revenue. All of that goes straight to the areas where it's by statute directed. We now have 13 approved operators, so of course that's more like $10 million. We're not seeking to recognize that revenue as part of our budget, but we do request $6 million we want to recognize $6 million and have that as our budget for spending on our operations. And as you all know, whatever is not spent by statute goes to the Tennessee Promise. I wanted to point out that the 9 members of the Sports Wagering Advisory Council are not paid. There are 3 appointed by the Speaker, 3 by the Lieutenant Governor, and 3 by the Governor. Those members we've been meeting about once a month, but by statute, they're required to meet quarterly. They are unpaid council members, and they can receive reimbursement for travel expenses, although that's been a minor amount. So to tell you about since we began fully regulating in January 1st, I have hired 10 people. And by statute, the Sports Gaming Act authorized the council to hire an executive director and and employees that were deemed necessary to carry out the duties of the council. In this request for a total of 19 additional positions, those 10 that have already been hired are included in that. So it's not 29, it's 19. I think we need the staff to be able to regulate in the best method possible and really do a great job to make sure that we are leading the country in not only consumer protection, but responsible gaming and generating revenue for our state. With that, questions?
Thank you, Director Thomas. And we do have several questions. I have a couple, but we will go first to Chairman Hawk.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Director Thomas, thank you for your work. You have definitely started on the ground floor and building this as you go. So I appreciate your willingness to do that. I heard a lot of numbers there and take me back a little bit. The $75,000 or $750,000 licensing fees that we talked about. Did you say that we've got 13 now? What were the original? How many were the original that came in under the origination of the plan? How many have come in recently since you've taken over? I think that's a few more than I anticipated, hearing 13. Can you tell me about the timeline of when they all came into process? And if you could, as you discuss that, if you could tell us what is that process? Does the board vote on them? Are they given recommendations? If you could tell us about the process.
Yes, thank you. So the lottery licensed 9 operators in 2021. And since January 1st, we have licensed an additional 4, with 3 being licensed in the last 2 weeks. And the process for that is, after we go through all of the vetting that I mentioned at the beginning of my talk, we prepare a recommendation for the council members and send that to them in advance with all of the background documentation, the criminal background report, our background investigation, financials, our financial auditor's review, really just everything that you would want to see to make sure that they were a viable licensee. And then the council meets and they vote to approve those licensees.
Thank you, Madam
Chairman Hawk, yes, please continue.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Do we have an idea how high could this number get? Do we know nationwide how many operators, knowing that we must be online, there must be an individual must be present within the state boundaries, as you said, the geo cash search by some of your professionals is very important because you must be in the boundaries of Tennessee. Is there a potential high water mark that we can look at for this process?
So I'll tell you, as of now, Colorado has 25 operators, mobile operators. New Jersey has 19, Iowa has 18, Michigan 15, Pennsylvania 13, Indiana 12, and Virginia 10. Tennessee is a state that has a lot of interest because of the fact that we don't have casinos, and therefore there's not a requirement that an online operator have an agreement with a casino to provide online sports, an online sports book. In a lot of states that have casino operations, the online operators are not only paying, regulatory fees, but they're also paying for a licensing fee with a casino in order to be able to use their name to do an online application.
Final question.
Chairman
Madam Chair.
Hawk.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I know we all, when the elections, all the advertising for elections stopped in November of 2020, the very next day, all the advertising for the online sports betting started the very next day, and it's not stopped since. So every other ad we see on TV and the billboards, that's wonderful. That's great. There's a lot of peripheral dollars that are coming from that. But tell me a little bit about the duties of the council staff as they relate to the registration of vendors.
Thank you. Yes, so the vendors that we register are those who are very closely connected to those licensees. So platform providers or geolocation services or gaming testing labs who do independent certifications, those who really would have an opportunity to be involved in sort of the meat and potatoes of the operation of the licensee. And we are doing close to the same type of background investigation on those vendors that are that closely connected as we are with the operators. Now, they do not pay a fee, and they also, by statute, they don't pay a fee. And they also do not receive a license. They are registered with us because there's not a licensing mechanism in the statute. But we do feel like it's important for us to have that background information on them because they can influence the operators' work and output just as much almost sometimes as the operators.
Chairman Todd.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I appreciate you being here. And I have just a couple of quick questions. Have there been any disputes filed between or by players with the council regarding operators so far?
We have received several disputes to the council staff. We have a form on our website where players can go and fill out complaints about the operator. To date, we have been able to resolve those by working with the operator in a manner that was satisfactory to both the operator and the player. So it was never appealed to the council for resolution. By rule, it goes to our office first to try to resolve it. So nothing has been appealed to the council.
Okay, thank you, Madam Chair. Can I go back and forth just to mention? Thank you. What, if any, issues or challenges has the council faced in regard to licensing operators?
I think really the volume of work that was present right from the get-go. There were several operators that had been pending for a while in 2021 that we needed to make progress on. The statute requires licensure within 90 days of a completed application. So that was our number one priority, was to see what was outstanding, get those moving. So really, it was just the sheer volume of it all with a very limited staff and trying to make sure we did a really thorough job of vetting them.
Thank you for that. Have there been any instances where operators were required to make true-up payments?
We are still looking at that. Now, you're referring to our rule, which allows an operator to make a true-up payment for the tax that they would have paid if they didn't meet the minimum hold for the prior year as a whole. So after the transfer over from the lottery, it took us a little bit to get the accounting function set up and to make sure that we had all of the numbers reconciled from the lottery and from the operator's viewpoint. And we are looking now at the calculations submitted by the operators with regard to all of their wagering data for any types of, perhaps promotional credits or other deductions to make sure we're comparing everything evenly. And that's what we're doing right now. So we have not asked for a true-up payment yet. That will be coming down the road.
Have you had any issues with collecting the privilege tax that's assessed?
No, in fact, we have, the way that it's set up, we have, they report to us and we do an ACH draft of their escrow account. So we're able to get it monthly.
Okay, and the last question, do you think that the operators are sufficiently insured based on what you've seen so far?
That is a great question. That's actually something we're looking at really closely to see what the appropriate insurance level is, because, from a player protection standpoint, we have a reserve requirement and a bond requirement so that any player funds, whether those are funds that are on deposit or funds that are owed as winnings, they have to be kept available in a reserve, and that's calculated on a daily basis, and they can't go below that. So to me, that's the big insurance issue right there. Now, we are right now trying to figure out what the appropriate level of cyber insurance is, because there could be a point in time where you could have, with the personally identifying information that all these operators have, a breach that could require identity monitoring, credit monitoring, all of those things. So what that number is we're struggling a little bit with that. They are, by and large, they have insurance coverage. Some of them have more than others. We are trying to make sure that we have the right amount, but not too much, because the market right now is pretty difficult to get coverage in that area.
And before I go to my next question, you had mentioned in your remarks, I think, that about $2 billion, which is very similar to the amount of money that the lottery has taken in the past year. That's how much has come through the sports wagering. But the lottery is a different animal, as we all know. Those monies go direct into state coffers. How much money has actually, from the sports wagering to date, how much money has gone into the state's bank account?
Yes, thank you. So as of the end of December, I believe it was 38.1 million.
Thank you. And then one other question, and I'll get to Chairman Williams. When we were first having the discussion about sports wagering, there was a lot of discussion about geofencing and being able to make sure that folks geographically outside our state were not able to participate in Tennessee sports wagering. Can you speak to the effectiveness of the geofencing that's being done? What sort of testing is being done to make sure that that's working as we want it to?
Yes, and it's really twofold. It's the geofencing and the geolocation software that the operators use not only prevents out-of-state access, but it is a real tool to identify fraud, because we have the capability to look at the geolocation software providers' map that shows basically a pin drop of where every person in Tennessee is gambling. And if our statute only allows you to have one account with an operator. And so if all of a sudden there are, 35 accounts at this table where Mary Beth Thomas is sitting, well, that's a problem for a bigger reason. But let's say otherwise. Yeah, I can go in there and see, okay, this says that Mary Beth Thomas has 10 accounts on her phone. I can then go in to an operator's back office platform and see if that operator has suspended me from their account so that I can't engage in proxy wagering for my 14-year-old. It is an amazing technology. We have had, I feel like it's been very successful with what all the operators have implemented and with what we've been able to access from the regulator standpoint.
And I assume we're doing some field testing of those at some point. You and I have talked about a particular place, but at any rate, Chairman Williams, you're recognized.
Thank you, Chair Lady. Just as a matter of sticking with the theme, Leader Garrett and I have a little wager here on the $750,000 fee. Is it a one-time fee for those, or are they paying that annually?
That's annually. Who won?
For the record, I won. But the yes, I also have the mic, so you really will never know. But I appreciate you guys coming to talk to me about the recurring revenues as it relates for the new positions. Obviously, we're standing up a new completely different thing here in Tennessee. With those additional positions, if you look at the $3.7 million recurring you're asking for those positions, I think there's some additional money for operational costs. And those positions, that looks to be like a pretty high per job number. I guess, could you share with us how we determine what that cost for that salary is going to be and the expenses associated with it so that we can better understand? Because it's a pretty high bar as it relates to those jobs. Could you share with us how you do that, how you come up with the number as it relates to budgeting?
Absolutely. This is one of those regulatory bodies where we don't have any ability to automate anything. We need brain power, and we need a lot of technology brain power, accounting brain power, and legal brain power. And those are expensive positions.
Mhm.
And it's not something that we can say, well, we'll set up this great approval system and check the box and move through. Everything that comes through our office is a judgment call.
Mhm.
And a deep dive review on what somebody is asking us to approve, and not just from a licensing standpoint, but from a day-to-day compliance standpoint. And so for the, I'd say the, upper tier positions, general counsel, deputy director, IT director, we needed to hire people who could absolutely get in and start and hit the ground running and
Mhm.
be regulating as of January 1st. And that's what we did. With the positions that have been further down in the org chart, we have looked to what other state government salaries provide and tried to stick closer to that range.
Was that in their gaming group, or was it just in state government together for those comparables?
You mean?
For those additional positions, you stated that you looked at other states as it relates to that.
No. I
Oh.
looked, like, for example, when we hired our controller, I looked at what other Tennessee state government agencies paid their controllers, things like that.
Okay. Well, for the record, Mr. Boring, we're thankful that you're here today. And Director Gribble, I do think that it says a lot about your abilities, which is why you're there, since when your previous position, you never got this many jobs funded recurringly in 1 year. So I'm sure your boss is thinking, wow, how did she do that? So I'm sure he'll call and ask. But thank you for what you're doing. When we listened to what the original fiscal note, what we thought was going to generate for the state versus what's happening now, it's just beyond belief, really. And so we appreciate the hard work you're doing and trying to stay out ahead of a constantly changing enterprise. So thanks.
Thank you.
Just one follow-up based on the $750,000 fee. This industry, I think you have 9 now. I'm sorry, 13 now, 1 pending. So 14 times 750 on a recurring basis if we don't add any more. But is this industry going to be, I have many vices. This doesn't happen to be one of them. So I'm not familiar with these vendors or these companies. But are there small ones that might be eaten alive by larger ones? Is there consolidation out there, or do you can see that those numbers will just continue to grow?
I think there will be some consolidation, yes. But, the industry is so new. Sports betting overall, online sports betting overall, was only legal in the states beginning 2018. So it's really difficult to look at what's happened across the country and make a prediction as to that. But I think there will probably be some consolidation. I don't think that we'll get down to 2 or 3 by any means.
And I guess one additional question on the staffing issue, to Chairman Williams' point, the budget number looks large compared to the staffing number. And I think you explained the reasoning behind the wage level, I suppose. But when we compare Tennessee with other states that maybe have been up and running since 2018 or a bit longer, the staffing that you're proposing, these 19 positions, 20 total, I think, how does that compare with other states that might be of similar size and have a similar number of vendors that you listed the number of companies by state early in your remarks? So how do our potential staffing numbers, proposed staffing numbers, compare to the staffing numbers in those states?
Well, and I can tell you, ballpark in my mind, I've had these discussions. In fact, when I was interviewing for this job, one of the things I did was call around to other states that I'd met through my work in the fantasy sports world at the Secretary of State's office and asked them that very question about staffing. And it's difficult because the states all handle it in different manners. Some of them have a lottery that oversees sports betting. Some of them have a gaming commission that also has casino oversight. And so there are a lot of positions that are shared. I think that with the ones, Wyoming is online only, and there's one, maybe Virginia is online only. And I believe we were comparable with the number of positions, between 15 and 20 of what they had allocated to their regulatory body. Now, with the ones, like Illinois, Keith, you can tell me, we talked to somebody in Illinois, I think they have 100 people working there, but they're also overseeing a different structure with casinos too.
All right, thank you so much, Director. Are there any other questions? Seeing none, thank you. We look forward to future reports and hearing about the additional dollars, and we will try to do a good job on this committee, particularly to make sure that we use those dollars well in Tennessee to make a difference for Tennesseans. So thank you for being here today. That, members, we are back in session and without objection. You're overruled, Representative Shaw. And just a reminder to those, there's still some food in the conference room if you want to have brunch. So we are adjourned.